Good morning. Gary Edwards, Vice Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. And today is Tuesday, March 26th, 2019. We're going to have a work session and go over the agendas. I think what we'll do is we'll go around the table and introduce ourselves. I'm Gary Edwards, as I said, the County Commissioner from District 2.
Assistant to Commissioner John Hutchings.
Ty Menser, Commissioner District 3.
Thomasina Cooper, Assistant to Ty Menser. La Bonita Bomar, Clerk of the Board.
Ramiro Chavez, County Manager.
Vicki Larkin, Commissioner Edwards' office.
Megan Porter, Public Information.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Hutchings
And Commissioner Hutchings is
excused.
He's excused, but he is dealing with some very important business.
Family matters.
And I'll just mention his mother's 101.
Yeah.
And happy birthday to her. Okay. Today's meeting, we'll have Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Menser. We'll approve the minutes, approve the agenda, have the opportunity for the public to address the board, and I'll ask the county manager if he's got any ideas of what might be happening in that regard.
Yes, Commissioner, thank you. You may receive some public testimony from Mr. Pettit. You receive another letter this morning, and on your agenda later today, under the public testimony discussion item, I will highlight some of the responses that we have provided on the previous letter, and maybe highlight some of the elements of the letter that you received this morning. Also, you may receive some public testimony from Mr. and or Mrs. Dilworth. They would like to address the board. You will hear some testimony related to their property. The staff has been working with them related to violations on their property. Depending on the public testimony that you received this afternoon, I will follow up with a response to that testimony next week. But that's what I have for you in terms of the
And does that cover your county manager's update as well?
And also on the, I have an item on the good news that I will be highlighting this afternoon. The Thurston County has ranked number 5 on the healthiest county across the state. And that has been an incredible effort by the Public Health and Social Services Department, and Shelley Slaughter, the director. In the last 2 years, we have moved from number 7 to number 6 to number 5. And but also, as we noticed that we have moved into the rankings, there is a lot of work to do as well. And I will highlight some of the opportunities that we have in the county to make it even better.
Okay, thank you. We're going to address consent items.
Sorry, if I may.
Yes. Are you
also,
not done?
I will follow up on the public testimony that we received last week from Mr. Pettit again, and also related to the biosolids. Public testimony that you received a couple of weeks ago from, I think it's Mr. Smith. I'm sorry, Mr. Mike Wright. And again, I will give you the details of how I'm planning to respond this afternoon later on the agenda when we get to item number 5 of today's agenda.
Is that it, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll deal with consent items A through E. The first one being the Lake Lawrence speedboat.
Yeah, this is a yearly application from the Seattle Inboat Racing Association to hold an event on Lake Lawrence from April 27 through April 27 and April 28th of 2019. And they have submitted an application. The Sheriff's Office has reviewed the application and is recommending approval. They have paid the $500 fee, And again, this is a yearly event. They need to secure a permit to conduct those type of events.
Any questions about any of that activity that's going to take place out at Lawrence Lake? Okay. How about central services?
Yes, you also reviewed this item. This is for your consideration to reclassify a position from a capital projects manager 2 to capital project manager 3. Somebody's buzzing here. Sorry, cell phone. This particular action is related to the project manager who is overseeing the flex unit. That will be the extension of the jail. The project manager who was overseeing this project resigned 3 weeks ago. And this particular action for you to consider is to have a higher classification which requires a different set of skills. One of which is having a project management professional certification. And I believe that is probably the certification that we need to oversee this project in a little bit better way. You also have this item on your agenda today, item number 3. We can probably go into the details of the flex unit and the jail project.
Any questions on
Nope.
that item?
So this is in terms of the budget. This request goes the top scale of the position goes from $7,750 to $8,508 a month. That will be just about 9.78%, and this is covered by the real estate excise tax 1.
Thank you. How about human resources? C?
Yeah, item 3C of your consent agenda. This is for you to consider the reappointment of Mr. Bill Ireland as a District 1 representative and Ms. Rachel Morris as a District 2 representative to the Thurston County Citizens Commission on Salaries for Elected Officials. Their term will be ending, if you approve, on March 31st, 2023.
Any questions about that? By any chance, does anybody here at the table know either one of these individuals?
I do not.
And I do not. So I think that's the intent, that these individuals are a bit removed from this board's general interactions for the sake of fairness.
Yeah, and that is a good point. It is a little bit different than any other appointments that you make for any other boards and commissions. And always to be a little more cautious, because any appointments to this board are the ones who will be setting the salaries for Board of County Commissioners as well as the salaries for other elected officials. And it's a good practice not to get involved too much into those appointments.
And I might mention these individuals have served in the past. And
Yeah, it's a reappointment.
a reappointment, so they're aware of the process. Okay, community planning and economic development, D.
Yeah, you discussed this item, and the board agreed to go ahead and reappoint Mr. Casey Kramer to the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board, and that will be represented from Commissioner District Number 2.
Any questions on that?
No, he was present at our SWAB, is that what it's called?
Yeah,
briefing.
SWAB, yeah.
I'm not sure if you were there, Commissioner Edwards, but he was here as part of the panel and seemed knowledgeable. So I gave me additional confidence that he's a good appointment.
Thank you, sir. And then we'll have the auditor's list.
Yeah, that's your weekly approval of the vouchers.
Okay. How about department items? Community planning and economic development again.
Yeah, this is an item for your consideration to approve an interagency agreement between Thurston County and the Washington State University Extension for $145,237. This is a yearly agreement that we need to enter with the extension And the $145,237 already included in the 2019 budget. And again, this is the agreement, is the instrument in which we can make the transaction to the extension. The $145,000 contributions from the county to the extension will fund $24,150 to the director, $46,350 to the 4-H coordinator, $25,000 for the stormwater management extension coordinator, $20,000 for the working land resources management coordinator, and $29,000 for the 4-H assistant. That will total $145,237.
And will we have representation from Washington State Extension Agency?
I don't know if Stephen Brumwell will be here, but certainly if he's not here, I will be able to outline the item for you.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
Public Health and Social Services.
Yeah, this item you also reviewed last week, and this is a request to extend an existing contract that we have with Thurston Regional Planning Council for the safe and active route to school projects. There is not a request to for additional funding. It's just a request to extend the contract. Right now, the contract expires on September 2019, and there's enough budget and enough activities under this contract, and the staff is requesting to extend it to July 31st, 2020.
And I see Chris is in the house,
If you have
and
any
I
questions.
suppose he'll be here this afternoon to fill us in about what's happening, right? Any questions, sir?
I don't think so. No.
Kelly? Okay. Commissioners and county managers items, and
No, you have an additional item there, Commissioner.
oh yeah, award and amend housing contracts.
Yeah,
Got it.
and
Skipped over that, sorry about that.
you also briefly reviewed this last week, and this is related to the sidewalk organization and some of the contracts that we have with them. And this is one of them in which we realized that the sidewalk organization may not be able to spend all the money allocated within this contract by June 30th, 2019. If the county does not spend that money by June 30, 2019, then that will go back to the state. And also the citizens will not be able to receive those services. So this request is to take some $127,000 out of their existing contract for rapid rehousing and reallocate it to the other outfits. In this case, is the increased the Family Support Center and Interfaith Works. And those two organizations will be able to provide the services intended with this money. And also we will avoid having to return those dollars to the state.
And at the same time, get the services that were intended in the Family Support Center.
yeah.
We feel we'll be able to provide those.
Yes, and they already provide those services, and this is just an increase to those services on their current contract. As you are aware, the sidewalk organization has some challenges related to their financial situation. And this is just one of the contracts that we had with them. A month ago, you approved supporting the sidewalk coordinating entry for $20,000. But that it was not related specifically with the sidewalk organization because the Family Support Center is the one who hires sidewalk to provide the services. And I believe that was probably just the beginning of at least the county realizing some of the challenges the organization has in terms of the financial aspect. So on this Friday during your planning session, I do have an item where you have the opportunity to listen a little more in detail, at least from staff's point of view, some of the financial challenges the sidewalk organization has. So.
Thank you. Any questions?
Nope. Covered that last week.
Yep. Okay. Commissioners' items, and county manager going to review our schedules.
Yep.
And then we'll just have an adjournment.
I know you have a 3 o'clock public hearing.
Are we going to adjourn after we have the public hearing, or are we going to adjourn the meeting and then go into the public hearing?
All depends how the meeting
The
goes.
time
I
frame?
think you may have enough time just to adjourn the regular board meeting and then reconvene for the public hearing, depending how the
Okay, and
time
then we'll
goes.
go into the public hearing at 3, I see.
Right. And this public hearing is for you to consider public testimony for changes to Thurston County Code 5.49050, which is related to the number of citizens who serve on the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee. Right now, the number is 7, and the proposal is to perhaps to bring it up to 9 members. And depending on the public testimony, you have for your consideration 2 actions. One is to close the public hearing, and depending on the public testimony, you may consider adopting the resolution. Or you may also want to choose to wait until Commissioner Hutchins is here. It's within your purview. But those 2 options are available to you this afternoon.
And I see we've got program manager here.
Yeah.
I suppose, are we anticipating any, I'm just kind of curious, any concern over this issue? Do you have any issues?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I don't believe so. I think it's a welcome change.
Okay. Thank you.
Was there any need for us to, I thought we kind of talked about waiting for Commissioner Hutchings. Was there any time consideration that would necessitate us acting today?
I guess, Carrie, you'll need to come up to,
No. You need to come
you'll
to
have
the
to come up
microphone.
to the microphone, sorry. And introduce yourself, please.
Good morning, I'm Carrie Hennon. I'm the program manager for treatment sales tax and public health and social services. You should act when you feel comfortable acting. As you've already appointed 2 new members of the treatment sales tax advisory committee. If you choose to move forward with this change and appoint 1 to 2 more members for sort of the convenience of onboarding people at the same time, doing that sooner is helpful, but there's not a firm deadline of any kind on my end.
I guess I would just point out that we've had quite a few discussions over this particular topic, and as far as I know, the chair of the board is in support of doing this, and that's why we're moving forward, I think. I can't speak for the chair of the board.
Before you get to the point, Commissioner, I recommend for you to go through the public hearing, receive public testimony, and at that
Right.
point during your discussion, make the decision whether we want to enact on the proposal, or perhaps you want to delay it.
Okay. Kelly, anything you want to add to that? And you're sitting in here for the boss. Okay, so now I guess we're going to move into Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019 for the Board of County Commissioners meeting. Is that right? I'll check in and make sure we're on schedule here with the county manager.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll call the meeting to order at 2 o'clock, and we'll have some presentations. We'll also have a public hearing at 3 o'clock on April 2nd, and we'll have another public hearing at 5 o'clock. So we're going to be busy on April 2nd. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by myself. We'll then do the approval of the agenda and of the board meetings, minutes from March 26th, 2019, and then we'll move into presentations.
Yeah,
Bob,
for-
Anita, and who's going to cover
Yeah, we
this?
have actually 5 presentations, actually proclamations for your consideration.
Okay.
The first one is for you to consider to proclaim Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019 as a National Service Recognition Day. And we're working to have Mr. Ray Cole from United Way of Thurston County. He is the VISTA leader, and Paul Larson from United Way of Thurston County, Director of Community Impact. they will be here to receive that proclamation.
Okay.
Also, the second proclamation is for your considerations is to proclaim April 2nd, 2019 as the National Equal Pay Day. And here, Miss Hillary Didmore or Cheryl Reeves from the YWCA will be here to accept the proclamation, and also I believe during their presentation will be highlighting some of the opportunities that perhaps the county has to improve equal pay and gender equity here in the county. And all of you receive a flyer that we have received from the YWCA. And let me elaborate a little bit more on that, if I may. Last week, we have a brief conversation on this. Certainly from the classification point of view and the salaries associated with any job classification that we have in the county, we do have parity, whether it's regardless of the gender. Any individual who fills those positions will be compensated accordingly. But sometimes it's more than just a salary compensation. It's how we go through the hiring process, how do performance evaluations, and sometimes we have some bias that we don't realize we do. So there is an opportunity, at least for us here in the county, to explore any type of training associated with this, and perhaps be better as to how we see the gender equity here in the county. So you will hear some of that next week while you consider the proclamation. The
Okay.
third proclamation and the fourth are from Public Health and Social Services, and Shelley Sliders here. I may ask her to come and explain what those two proclamations are all about.
Good morning, Commissioners. Shelley Slaughter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. And we are very happy to have two proclamations on the agenda for next week for Board of County Commissioners. Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month is every April, and we will actually be presenting this in partnership with the Thurston County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. So Prosecutor Thunheim, I believe, will be here as well, and will join in the presentation for this, as well as several community organizations that work together to prevent child abuse in our community, including Monarch Children's Justice Center, Family Education and Support Services, Providence St. Peter's Sexual Assault Clinic, and several others. So wear blue that day, and we wear blue to commemorate children that have been abused and neglected and promote prevention of child abuse. And then the next item is National Public Health Week. And we've asked for this to be on the BoCC agenda because it's 1 week. We want to honor our public health professionals and all of our staff that do this work. So that is National Public Health Week, and we'll have several members from our department here for that.
And the reason this item came to the Board of County Commissioners is because the regular Board of Health is after this week.
That's right. The Board of Health
So,
is next
and
week.
that's the reason.
Any questions?
Nope, I have no question. Anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Oh, thank you very much. And you already, maybe you came in after you got a plug about number 5. Did you come in after the county manager? Or were you here when the county manager was talking about how good your health department's doing?
Oh.
The the health ranking, yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted you to know you got a good plug from
Thank
the
you.
county manager.
Thank you very much.
And the last proclamation for your consideration will be for you to consider to proclaim April 2019 as the National County Government Month. This is a brand new proclamation, and this is an effort initiated by the Washington State Association of Counties. This is, at least from my perspective, this is the first year, and WASAC has sent out a draft proclamation to all counties for you to consider taking an action on this. yeah, I think we can always celebrate county government, I guess. So for your consideration. And nobody's going to be here accepting this proclamation, so I will outline the gist of the proclamation for you next Tuesday.
I might point out that this is quite crucial when it really comes to how we function in our role in government, because we've got a national group and a state group, and we really rely on them quite a bit to get us on the right track and help us stay on the right track. I'll just let it go with that. Anything, Commissioner?
I don't think so.
Okay. Then, do you have any follow-up or other items after it's too early, I think, to talk about what the public is going to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know who from the public may be coming, maybe as a result of today's testimony, maybe a follow-up of some of the members of the public. And during my update, I will follow up with any particular items that you may receive this afternoon.
Okay. Okay, how about current consent items, A through C?
Yes, item 3A, this is a request from the treasurer to authorize his office to negotiate the sale of a particular parcel. As you may recall, a couple of months ago, the board, no, it was last year, the board authorized the treasurer's office to manage all the tax title properties. So for the public's information, tax title properties are those properties that perhaps a property owner has failed to keep up with the property taxes, and at some point they're foreclosed and then becomes under the purview of the county. That's what we call tax title properties. And there's a lot of fees associated with that as we move along, because at the end of the day, we have an obligation to do the best possible job to surplus those properties and get back the revenues. So when the board considered giving that to the county treasurer's office, I believe it was a strategic move to be proactive as to how we're going to be surplusing those tax title properties. For the most part, those tax title properties are those they are not have the ability to be built on. It's very odd shapes, very small, and this is just one example. Some of the steps that we need to take is we need to conduct a public auction on any of those tax title properties. And in this case, the public auction was conducted and no bids were received. So the next step in the process after that public announcement of public auction is conducted, then under the law allows, in this case, the county treasurer to have private negotiations with a particular property owner who is willing to purchase this property. So this is the request before you. This is a triangular shape property that is 0.2 acres. And the compensation they have agreed on with this private party is $710. And that is probably adequate for this particular transaction. And again, the long-term benefit is now the 0.21 acres under a new ownership will be part of the property tax ledger.
Thank you. Any questions?
It might be assessed at some higher value, I would imagine.
The assessed value was $500, and then we added the fees associated with that, so that comes to just about $710.
The assessed value is $500?
Because you cannot build anything on this property. Because after you, 0.21 acres, triangular shape, if you just go through the regular setbacks that we have in the county, that leaves an unbuildable lot.
There's more value to owning property than just building on it, but that's just a commentary.
Yeah, and in this case, you're absolutely right. In this case, for the property owner who is purchasing this, they're going to be using as a driveway to access their property.
Right.
So there is, yeah,
There's a million things you can do besides.
right.
I guess I'd like to know, though, in the past, when this has come up for auction, we haven't even got a bid on it. So through this process, we do get to get that back on the tax rolls, and maybe an adjoining property owner, like in this case,
Yeah, in this case,
will make the purchase. I'm surprised we don't have to give it away, to be honest with you. It should be almost free.
Well, unfortunately, we cannot.
I know we can't give it
We can't
away,
do that because we have an obligation.
But at
to
least
the
we
tax-
get it into something productive
Yeah.
again.
Have an obligation to the taxpayers. Yeah.
Any questions at all on that particular issue?
Oh, it's in, what are you looking at, Kelly? That, is that in our,
No, so I'm online right now. Sorry. And so they have links here. Just wait a minute. Information. Shows us the property.
And I believe all this information that we might be reviewing here, even though it's not on paper right here in front of us, is available to the public on the website.
That is correct.
Linda Thompson owns each of these ones.
that one probably, yeah, makes sense. Okay, I'll take a look at it.
Okay? Good to go?
Yep.
And item B, at the sheriff's office?
Yeah, this is a request for you to allow the sheriff's office to issue a request for proposals for an inmate upside drug testing services. Currently, those services were provided by a different contract, which is what we call as a piggyback on that state contract, so we didn't have to go through the regular bidding process. The state is no longer going to be providing those services via this contract, so as a result, we don't have any other way to go with our own request for proposal to secure a vendor to provide those services. And this is the request for you to allow to do that. Just to give you a perspective in terms of the cost of this, those services is just about $48,000 a year, and this is included in the 2019 Sheriff's Office budget. And again, this is for secure for inmate off-site drug testing services in association with the corrections facility.
And are there particular programs associated with this, possibly like work release or some other type of supervision?
Yeah, all that is all the supervision activities, the Sheriff's Office in coordination with the rest of the law and justice partners, making sure that the drug testing is part of that process, and this program does that.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
No.
And then we're going to have our auditors, financial services on C.
Yeah, that's your weekly voucher list.
And item 4, commissioners,
Before you-
commissioners and county manager items.
There is another item that is not included in here. You will see on your agenda next week, and that will be for you to consider amending the existing contract that we have with the consultant who is helping us on the courthouse project. Right now, we have, based on the previous approval, we have maxed out the authorization, so we'll coming back with for you to consider extending that authority to continue working with the consultant on the courthouse.
But that won't be a consent item.
No,
It'll
no,
be a listed
it will not be a
item.
consent, but I just
Okay.
want to let you know that it's not included in your agenda, but this item will be coming to your consideration next Tuesday.
Okay.
Right. Now, the item that is included on your agenda for A, this is for you to consider setting a public hearing here on April 23rd, 2019 at 5 in the afternoon for you to consider public testimony regarding a resolution for the Board of County Commissioners related to the regular property tax and providing for the submission to qualified voters in Thurston County. This is related to the levy deadlift ballot measure that you might consider putting to the voters related to for the construction of the courthouse and regional administrative building. And again, in this particular action, I have for your consideration August 2019. But for next week, I will add for your consideration to include also a February 2020 as an option. So when it goes to the public hearing, it will be the options for you to consider those two options.
So whichever one selected doesn't have to go back to another public hearing because they were
So
told about the possibility.
I will cover both on the same action, so then you have the flexibility when the time comes for you to make a decision, when you want to place it at.
Is there going to be an estimated dollar amount presented at this time?
No, because the estimated dollar amount will be established on the ballot measure. Here is only you to set the public hearing. And when you may consider, the way that I'm trying to do is work it through the process. So if you choose to have this ballot measure put on the August primary election of 2019, then you need to take a formal action in early May. And at that point is when you consider what the dollar amounts will be. But if you like, we can probably add an estimated amount.
Well, at some point, we need to inform the public what the intent is on how this might impact them on their property taxes. I know if we raise the lid, it's so much. How much do we need to raise it to get to a point that satisfies the need for that whole construction project?
I can probably have that on my presentation during the public hearing, if you like, or you.
And in contacts with the public, one issue that was brought up that I haven't heard discussed, and maybe I'll just mention this to you because maybe you can find out for the members of the board. When the city of Olympia did their city hall, they ran into some overrun issues that had to do with environmental cleanup, and it was a substantial amount of money. So could we see, I guess maybe you never know until you get into the ground on something like that, but maybe at least let us know what they ran into in that project, because it was at least in close proximity and on that fill area down there.
Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely correct. So let me see if I can address that concern. The city of Olympia, when they built their new city hall, that used to be an old Safeway. Prior to that used to be an old gas station. And as a result, there was evidence that perhaps contaminated soils will be. They went through a reclamation of that site, but it was not until they get into deep in the construction, they realized the contamination was more than what they thought. The Plum Street doesn't have the history. It does have some environmental impacts such as wetlands they would need to mitigate. But also to address the unknowns on the $250 million estimate that we have, we do have a certain percentage to address some of the unexpected, to cover some of the issues that perhaps we don't know at this point. So we're trying to, at least anticipate in terms of the dollar amount as to how we can respond to perhaps the unknown at this point. I don't know if I answered your question, because getting to the point of seeing whether it's a specific contamination of the soils, then we need to break ground and go through extensive testing on the site. And at this point, perhaps will be too premature.
I guess from my perspective, I would just like to have it be as an example. I mean, this is it happened. They didn't know it was going to happen. Just so we had some rough idea of potential. I mean, we might not have the same history, but then again, 100 and some years ago, we might not have recorded the history properly. So that's my only concern.
Yeah, and I can probably see what I can find out leading to the public hearing, if you decide to set.
Maybe the Historic Commission can help us out and let us know what was going on. Any questions on this particular issue?
I don't think so. I think I understand where we're headed.
Okay. Okay. And then,
And again, just to make sure that what you see here is going to be revised
yes,
to include 2 dates.
Yep.
One day August 2019, and the other one February 2020.
yes.
Just to make sure we cover all the options that you have. And the reason is my suggestion, but it's up to you. I can also include the general election. But my recommendation, perhaps, you not to consider the general election as an option. But please let me know if you like to do that, and I can add it.
I guess I would like to clarify one thing, being you bring that up. Are we, as a board, locked in to when this might be presented to the public by including or not including those particular days that there are going to be elections? So it sounds like I'm hearing maybe 3 upcoming election days are possible. If we don't enter that in there, that we don't have then that option? Is that what you're saying?
You do have the option, at least from my point of view, is trying to cover, the public, at least if they are commenting, they're commenting on the options that you have. But if you like to include the November general election, I can add it if you choose. I mean, really, I'm looking for your direction on that. This is just my suggestion to you, is the 2 options, the special elections, one in August and the other in February.
Okay. Any questions, sir?
No, I mean, it's I don't think I'm going to be thinking November, but if any of the 3 of us even possibly might think of it, it doesn't hurt to include it. Okay. So if you have any interest in listing it in there, I don't have any objection to that.
No, I'm just trying to cover all the options so that we don't eliminate the potential of something that some citizen might bring forward. That's all.
Will do.
Okay. Okay. Our reports on activities. County manager's going to fill us in about what will be on our agenda for the upcoming week, and then we'll have an adjournment, and then it sounds like we're going to be thinking about going into a public hearing.
Yeah,
at
and
3
we
o'clock.
have 2 public hearings. In the afternoon, you will consider taking public testimony on a proposal to change the Thurston County Code 13.56.310A related to landscaping and vegetation management. And this is leading to an item that you approve on that regular Board of County Commissioners meeting maybe a month ago, where Public Works came before you to ask permission to cut a tree.
Oh, okay.
So under that scenario, this is an attempt to streamline the process, and the proposal before you is to delegate that authority to the county manager. There is a lot of trees that perhaps presents a hazard to the community that needs to be taken down, and sometimes going through a board meeting, as you have experienced, takes time and effort. By delegating that authority to the county manager, we're going to streamline the process. And again, this is just one attempt to, the many, hopefully you will see this year, to delegate some of that authority.
Any questions, sir?
I'm just laughing because this is the 3rd time that it's been on the agenda, and I see landscaping vegetation management ordinance, and I'm like, what did I miss? And then I find out that it's about the tree cutting issue, which is less stressful for me, so at some point I'm gonna figure out what this is.
Okay. And then we'll adjourn from that particular public hearing and go into another public hearing at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, and the 5 o'clock, I would expect to have a lot of public interest, is where you receive public testimony on a proposal for you to consider the formation of a special use district on the Summit Lake. And then at that point, you have, as any public hearing, you have two options to close the public hearing. And depending on the public testimony, you have the option to go ahead and approve the formation of the Summit Lake Special Use District. Just to, as a matter of consideration, you just approve the formation, but you don't actually create it, because that needs to go through several steps that leads to the citizens will have to vote themselves in, and the citizens will have to establish what the rates are. You, as legislative authority, just allowed that process to begin with this action, because you are not creating it. You're not establishing the rates at this point. It is a process the citizens within the Summit Lake area will have to go through a voting process, and then the results of the voting will come back to you.
So I know we're going to hear a lot of opinions about whether there should or shouldn't be a district, but I would encourage people's comments. I think what we're focused on is whether or not we should allow a process to go forward. And I would encourage the public, if they're listening from Summit Lake, to focus their comments on that, because that's what I want to hear, because that's the decision I have to make. If there's a good reason why we shouldn't let this process go forward, I want to hear that. But if it's about how somebody might vote who lives at Summit Lake, that's not really my decision. So
No,
they can tell me, but it's not really the focus of the hearing from my perspective.
You're absolutely on point, Commissioner, because it's and it's just my point of view. The special use districts or the lake management districts is a good piece of legislation for individuals. They can tax themselves and manage how they like to see their lakes being managed. And that's really the gist of it. Is the public hearing is just to hear public testimony for you to allow the process to continue.
Anything else on that? I would ask the notification process to get this information out that this is an upcoming activity. Has that been completed, or is it ongoing? Would you know at this time?
It is ongoing. You know, we obviously we met the required public notice, and I believe you're required to send the notifications to some of the Summit Lake residents, which we have done that. So I think we have done a good public outreach, but again, you know, that is on the eyes of the beholder, how much public outreach it is.
Okay, for our meeting then on April 2nd, when we discuss this particular item again and set the public hearing, could you have somebody from Public Works at least be here to tell us what efforts they've taken to
Absolutely. As part
get
of the
in
public
contact with everyone, so we have a good
Absolutely, as
understanding?
part of the public hearing, I like to perhaps correct one of your statements. You're not setting the public hearing. You're holding the public hearing.
Yes. Yeah.
So during the background, staff will give you and the public background as to how this request came to be, how you asked the county engineer to review this. By statute, he or she has to review the feasibility of that. You receive a report on that late December, and here we are. So staff will walk you through, so I'll make sure that they include the public outreach on their staff report. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions on that particular issue?
Nope.
Okay, I think we've finished April 2nd. Now getting on to our agenda for this morning, we're down to proclamations and awards.
morning. I'm Bonita Bomar, the clerk of the board. And under proclamations, we have reviewed all of the ones that are coming up. So in your packet, you just have the newest one, which we discuss, the National County Government Month. And the sample proclamation is included for that recognition. And it will be coming around for your review and signature along with the others. I don't have any new ones to present at this time. The proclamations for Board of Health, as they were saying, they have another one coming up for April 9th, and so they will be presenting that next week. And that's all that I have under that.
Thank you, La Bonita. Any questions of La Bonita?
Nope. We have to wear socks, is what I'm reading here.
The important information.
Are they blue? Because we got to wear
Well,
blue for the.
And we have not received.
We have not received the
package.
SOGs. That was the Washington State Association of Counties who mentioned that.
So we're looking
Sucks,
forward to the package.
Okay.
With the I Heart Counties campaign, hopefully they're red.
I'm just curious that
But it's child abuse. We have to wear blue.
Blue.
You really. It's
I-
gonna be,
I'm just curious as to how we're going to be able to showcase socks.
Have a photo op and hold the trouser.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
I'll let you figure that one out, Mr. County Manager.
Will do,
Or
sir.
you could do like Commissioner Edwards and wear blue and red together.
There you go.
he's got
Whatever
the-
it takes.
He's got the nice gray sport coat. I need that. That would go with any of that.
Okay. Advisory boards and commissions. La Bonita, you're on the hook again.
I am. The first item is from the Capital Area Regional Public Facilities District. There are 8 members on this particular board, and in your packet, you will find an outline of what the board consists of, their duties, the membership, and how it breaks down. Also, you will have in your packet application or biography of John Grossam, and they meaning their board. You will see also an email from the clerk of the city of Lacey, who is in charge of this particular board, recommending the appointment of this gentleman. So you have time to review his biography and concur or whatever you so desire on the appointment of this person.
So this particular appointment is interesting to this board because it's not a Board of County Commissioners appointment solely. It requires the confirmation of Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and the county. And so it's a little bit different appointment. So this recommendation before you is to affirm the appointment, not necessarily select the appointment. And in the cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater, again, also will consider affirming that appointment. That's a little bit nuance difference on this particular board.
Is there a particular RCW that's unique to this particular position?
Yes, and the RCW that applies for this position is RCW 35.57010-3C.
Okay.
Capital Area Regional Public Facilities District. I've never heard of this. Is there any other background you can give me about what they do?
On your packet is additional information related to.
Well, I'm looking at that, and it says duties of the board. The Public Facilities District shall file annual financial statements and annual reports within 90 days. No other powers are granted, and no other duties are authorized. so that doesn't really help me.
Yeah, how about a Reader's Digest version?
Yeah, we'll bring back additional information because also this came as a surprise to me, to be honest
Okay,
with you.
all right. I didn't mean to catch anybody by surprise, but I,
Good.
So
I'm glad you asked that question, sir.
we'll go back and the public facilities district, yeah. So I'll get more information.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, La Bonita, you got more to go here? You got Planning Commission and some other things, or?
I do. On the Planning Commission, the vacancy is for Commissioner District 1. We talked about this last week a little bit, and since Commissioner Hutchings is not here, we may want to hold that over.
Yes, I would recommend that we do that. I actually did have contact from the son of the individual that's put in. He's a local deputy, and he is on vacation, and he did say he's got a call in to the commissioner about this particular issue. So if we could hang fire for a little bit on that.
Okay, great, thank you.
So if I may go back to the previous item, you want to hold any actions until I get additional information related to the public facilities district and appointment, or you like to add that on the agenda for next Tuesday?
I guess I would, unless there's a reason for a rush, I would like to hold off until we have an understanding
Perfect.
of what type of an action we're going to be taking and how it might affect the community.
Thank you.
Is that okay,
that's fine.
sir?
Yeah.
Your next item is a reappointment for the Agriculture Advisory Board. Pat Labine, she's been on the board since 2003, and her application is included in your packet.
And when would this appointment take place? Today?
It could, I mean, that's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, are we in a rush?
No, we are not.
Okay, again, I guess I would, I don't know Pat Labine, but I think the board chair ought to be here as we move forward.
That's fine.
That's all I'm thinking.
Okay.
No problem.
The last portion is the continuation of current vacancies. I have not received any new applications at this time for any of these vacancies that we have.
Okay.
Let's just give
And
you-
we are going to take action already on the Citizens Commission for salaries on elected officials.
Yes.
This afternoon.
This afternoon, right? Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, ma'am?
No, sir.
Commissioner, anything you would like to add?
No, I'm good.
Kelly, anything on this? Okay. So, I guess now we move on to the PIO check-in. And it looks like Megan is here solo.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead, fill us in.
She
What do you
wants,
have for us
she wants
today?
us to ask her questions.
Well, okay, well then,
see that
I'll
expression
defer
in her
to my
face.
seatmate.
I don't have anything. We did our coffee with Commissioner yesterday, and Megan was present, and if you had any suggestions or thoughts, I'd be happy to hear that. Otherwise, it seemed okay to me, but
Yeah, I thought it went really well. There was good attendance. People were very interested in talking about the courthouse. So, I mean, from my perspective, I thought it went really well. And it was really great that you asked where people heard about it from, and most people said Facebook. So that was really promising as well, that people are checking in on our social media and seeing events like that.
Guac Talk was the only thing I had it to compare to. So I'd been to a couple Guac Talks, but
You know,
we'll
it
keep
went really
doing
well.
them. We're going to do them quarterly for now.
And I think it's extremely helpful to include a topic, because then people know what they're going to come and talk to you about. So
Right.
they may not understand what Coffee with the Commissioner is.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, they're going to be talking about this. And
I took
it's
that
really
from
helpful.
Hutch because he had one on UGAs. It's like, I want to learn more about UGAs. So June 20th, we're thinking, and we're going to do it in the evening because people had requested. A couple people said, I can't, I work. Can you have one in the evening? So we're going to do one at like 6 o'clock on a Thursday in June. And I haven't picked a topic yet. If anybody has a good idea,
Excellent.
let me know.
Yeah.
I guess I would have one question. So for the public out there, no two commissioners can be together without it being posted with an agenda. So we don't get to have discussions on issues like that. So you had good input, apparently, from members of the public on a particular topic. Is there any way that I could be allowed to know kind of what the gist of it was? I mean, like a little Reader's Digest. I mean, apparently it did talk about courthouse activities and where we might be going with the courthouse. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just curious, does that come from the PIO?
Yeah,
or-
maybe Megan can provide you an overview of that meeting without getting the commissioner involved in a way. I think it's just a perspective as to how the meeting went.
But
And
I
some
would
of the
guess not
comments.
just for myself, but for our missing commissioner, he might be interested. Just I'm always interested in what the public has to say, and being as we can't do that as a joint venture, I'm just
Maybe Megan can provide a synopsis. of,
just very, very short. You know,
Yeah.
there were 25 people there, and they were rah, 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 or no, 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 or whatever it was. You know.
I can provide an email, or I can verbalize it right now if you'd like, whatever you'd like.
Well, I'm okay. I mean, we might not want to take the time, I'm guessing, because I'd like to have Commissioner Hutch
Okay.
hear the same thing, probably.
Okay. I'll send out an email to you guys.
And
I
if
think
we
it
have
went
one of
well.
those board check-ins, I'm happy to share
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Yep.
when we have, okay.
We'll have one on Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, well then,
Well, I'm Thursday, I'm in salmon recovery, I'm in Kingston for the Puget Sound Salmon Recovery Council.
Okay, so let's talk about that because I have scheduled an executive session to go over the applications for the HR director. So
This
maybe I
Thursday?
can touch base with you and give me your perspective leading to that meeting.
Okay.
And I did want to tell you guys about an opportunity that we have that's a benefit to us. A master's student from Evergreen reached out to me because they're doing their capstone on public engagement and interaction from the government with their citizens. And so they're going to be providing us with a scope of work to kind of facilitate the first directors panel meeting. It's going to be at Evergreen, and it'll be about water, so water quality, water quantity, and how stormwater kind of fits in there. So it's a really great opportunity. They're gonna do all the advertising for it. They're going to set it up logistically, and then they'll provide us with an evaluation of how we can do the next one better. So it's just going to be a really great partnership, and I thought you guys would be interested in learning about that.
how about what's a director's panel, I guess? Who would participate? in
So
a
for that particular one, it would be our CPED Director, Joshua Cummings, and then Public Works Director, Jennifer Walker, and Public Health Director, Shelley Slaughter.
Okay.
And the topic is?
Water.
Water.
So talking about the quality, quantity, and how stormwater affects those.
At Evergreen?
At Evergreen. We don't have the date, we don't have the time or any of those. They're just gonna be supplying us with the scope of work to say, this is what we can do for you. It's a 7-week project that they have to fulfill their capstone. And so it's just a really great partnership with students from Evergreen, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe you can outline the off-site board meetings that we're planning to do for the rest of the year.
Yes, so as part of the communications plan, we talked about doing BoCC meetings off-site, going out to the community. So we're setting up logistics to do May off-site in Rochester. Yeah, May off-site in Rochester, August in Yelm, and then November in Commissioner Hutchings' districts, so maybe Tenino or the Olympia area. So we'll work with Commissioner Hutchings on where he would most like to have that. But we're going to be getting that. The meetings would happen between 5:30 and 6 is when we would start them, depending on how we can set up the location, and we'll make sure all of that's notified. But it's taking government out into the community so that people can participate in the commissioner meetings without having to come here, so.
Is that by any chance something that the college can work with us on as well? Or maybe they have better equipment than we have, because I know logistically it's been a problem for staff in the past, apparently, to set up the proper electronic devices.
We need to coordinate with TC Media, so we
They're going to take care of all that?
we'll coordinate that. It will not be as sophisticated as this room, quote unquote.
Okay.
But certainly we'll make sure we work through the logistics.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
Not for me.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Briefing, public hearing, decisions pending.
Last week, you hear a briefing related to the development code docket. On the normal circumstances, I'll bring this item for your decision today, but Commissioner Hutchins requested to hold that conversation until Friday, so that item is included on your planning session. So Commissioner Hutchins can participate on that.
Okay, hold until Friday. And I guess if the public's interested, this is an open public
It's
meeting we'll
yeah, it's
have on
gonna-
Friday as well,
Yep.
right?
And we'll begin at 8:30. You will work through lunch all the way until 5 in the afternoon. It's a action-packed agenda, as I call it, and it's going to be held at the Public Works Tilly campus.
Okay. Okay, legislative update.
Yeah. So let me begin by give you some feedback in terms of the House of Representatives released their version of the state budget. A couple of highlights on that is it does include $1,094,000 in fiscal year 2019. That will be the supplemental budget, and the same amounts for 2020 and 2021, and this is related to reestablishing the court impact fees. So that is a good news, at least to us. Is included on the House version of the budget. Yesterday, as soon as I learned this news, I sent a thank you letter to Representative Dolio and Representative Dolan on the county's behalf, because I believe they have worked very hard to make sure that is included on the House version of the budget. Let's hope this is included on the Senate version of the budget as well, and hopefully the governor will approve under those circumstances. Also, as it refers to the county, is included public health assistance. So it is included $1,046,000 in 2020 and $1,046,000 in 2021, and that will go to the public health and social services. As you may recall, the governor included $20 million for the foundational public health, and hopefully this at least materializes. It's not enough, but at least it's something to help us continue to address the needs of the health of the community. And on other news, on the transportation side, includes the $4.5 million to continue the study on the I-5 corridor from Mounts Road to south of Tumwater. That's just about the highlights of how the House version of the budget impacts the county. Any questions on that?
No, I don't, but I'm preparing to take a break here for staff. I just want to make sure we get it in the right time. Is that going to be?
Let me finish my report.
Yeah, okay.
So let me walk you through this, all the different bills.
How long are you going to take, sir, about that?
Maybe an hour. Just kidding. 5 minutes.
Okay, good enough. Thank you very much. And the staff thanks you very much, sir.
Yeah. So let me walk through just to give you an update. There is a lot of bills that we're tracking. The fund of flexibility for counties is dead. The annexation islands is also dead. The annexation, although the additional proposal from the city of Los is also dead. The fish barrier removal funding is dead. The modifications to the on-site sewage systems, it held a public hearing and is moving into the House Committee for Environmental and Energy. The stormwater fees for DOT, we opposed that bill and passed the Senate, and it's ready for a public hearing coming up on the House Transportation Committee. This particular bill will have an impact to the county, negative impact, which is about $200,000. And what it does is, as any, it is related to the surface water fees that we pay. For any impervious surfaces in the county, the owner of those facilities pays a related fee, including public works. To all the roads related pays a fee to the stormwater utility. Well, the state has been paying, obviously, for all the state highways that contribute to the stormwater in the county. So this particular proposal puts a very high threshold as to how the state will have to pay that, meaning that we need to justify from a very comprehensive and very difficult report, an annual report, as to how much water state highways contribute to a stormwater system. So this is a real concern, not just for the county, but for all counties. And it has passed the Senate and is heading to the House for consideration. So we'll keep tracking on that, and we'll continue to oppose that.
I guess I'd ask one question about that. Is that what you would consider an unfunded mandate?
Well, in a way, it's an unfunded mandate. You can probably relate to that. It's really taking money away to address our stormwater issues. That's really what it is. And even some of the fees the state provides to the county is on a discount rate. So they're already getting a discount on what they're supposed to be paying, and yet they want to take that away. And again, it could have an impact of close to $200,000 to the county if that happens.
Okay.
The House Bill 1590 does the councilmatic sales tax affordable housing. That's dead, unfortunately. The foundational public health is moving forward in a larger context, past the Senate, heading to the House. It doesn't have a revenue component to that, but it doesn't have to in order to pass a legislation. But at least we see on the proposed budget there is some relief on that. Let me see anything. The House Bill 1074, that's related to raises the ages to 21 for the purchase of tobacco and vaping products. That is going through an executive committee and has large support, bipartisan. Another one for your interest, the wrongful dead. The Senate bill died, however, the House bill died, however, the Senate bill 1563 is moving forward. And in a couple of meetings, I briefly mentioned to you what will be the potential impact in terms of liability if this bill passes. And it's probably, you may recall, it's close to 30% increase on liability payments. Not just the county has to pay, but also the risk pool that we belong to. And as a result of that, our fees will go up as well. The prepaid postage stamps, the Senate Bill 5063 passed the Senate, is moving forward. Another bill of interest, I'm just going through very quickly. Affordable housing, the Senate Bill 5812 related to allowing ADUs and portions of the GMA. It passed the Senate and is moving to the House Governmental Committee. the public records, House Bill 1667, which gave us a relief on the reporting, annual reporting for the public records, has passed the House and is moving to the Senate. Prevailing wages, House Bill 1743, it fixes some of the prevailing wages legislation they passed in 2018, passed the House and is moving to the Senate. Sales tax for 911, and that is having an increase from a 0.1% to a 0.2% of a sales tax to fund the 911. That has passed the House. Passed the Senate and is heading to the House and is currently on the Finance Committee. Public defense funding is dead. The creation of new counties is dead. The county sheriff's salaries is dead. The septic systems modification is also dead. That is related to taking some of the ability of some of the sewer providers to impose what is the proximity fee, as you may recall. That is that. And stop me if you need additional information on any of those bills.
You're doing good.
The sales tax for 911, you said from 1/10 to 2/10. Is that give us the power to do that, or is that
No,
does that?
It just opens up, but the public needs to vote, has to vote on that.
And would we have to, we would
You
vote on
as-
letting the public vote on that?
Yeah, you as a legislative authority has to put this measure on the ballot.
Got it.
It's a ballot measure in the public, yeah. And also last bill for your interest, House Bill 1829, that's a Veterans Assistance Levy. That's in support. And that is a little bit of a different bill, but it's related to the first bill, which is House Bill 1718. And what allows is if the Veterans Assistance Levy, we can probably raise funding without being on the cap of the levy rate that we have, the $1.80 per 1,000 valuation. So this is good news. I haven't got the chance to see what the positive impacts will be to the county, but certainly that is moving forward in the system. Any
Okay,
questions?
any questions?
No.
And I believe before we move on, we'll take a, we'll reconvene at 10:30. That'll give us 23 minutes or something, okay? Pardon? On time. Okay, and we're back from our break, and we're going into Commissioners' items, and the first one looks like it's comprehensive plan amendment discussion.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Allow me to frame that. In the meantime, may I ask staff to join us on the table? So let me give you a little bit of history, and as benefit mainly for Commissioner Menser. As you know, we have been working on the comp plan amendment for a couple of years. Has been in the docket, and we'll continue to work on that. Last year, it became to our attention. The Department of Commerce is the one who tracks the status of the comp plan amendments among all the different jurisdictions. And in some of the status they were showing at some point was, in progress of being completed. And unbeknownst to us, must have been probably 10 months ago or so, if not a little longer, where became to our attention that table showed as out of compliance, the county. So the result of this out of compliance status it stopped the Department of Ecology to issuing grants to the county as a result of the out of compliance status. So at that point, the county perceived that it was out of their purview, the Department of Commerce, to put that type of status on the county. So we filed a legal action against the Department of Commerce that resulted in an agreement with them. And the agreement was they took the out of compliance status, and right now I think we are in progress. So it's what? Overdue. So, and I think it's a little bit softer, but again, the Department of Ecology at this point is holding the money because they, from their perspective, they believe we are out of compliance as well, although they were in the process. So as you know, the comp plan amendment is a very comprehensive, very complex issue, and the staff has been working to bring everything to your attention for you to have a comprehensive approach as to how the comp plan amendment needs to be addressed, talked, and perhaps approved. Within that context, there is some opportunities, what I call is a low-hanging fruit. And there's some areas like the critical areas, I believe, ordinance that we have already passed, that as opposed to tied to the overall comp plan amendment update, may be an opportunity to decouple some of the elements that we have right now. And again, maybe address some of the concerns that perhaps the Department of Ecology has related to the comp plan amendment update. That's really the framework, and the staff is here to walk you through the details as to what the decouple option there is going to be before you to consider.
Thank you. That was a great summary, County Manager. So I'll let the staff, Joshua Cummings, the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. We've got with us Allison Osterberg from Community Planning, Cindy Wilson, and then Travis Burns, our prosecuting attorney. So in essence, we've got, in 2017, I believe, the decision was made to put the CAO discussion on the same track as the comprehensive plan update. It's come to our attention now that one of the main issues that ecology is having is that potentially we as a legislative body, the Board of County Commissioners, hasn't legislatively addressed the good work that we've done on our environmental protections, and that is the critical areas ordinance. And so I'll let the staff get into that a little more, but the concept, as Romero stated, is decoupling the CAO portion from the comprehensive plan update so that we can have a legislative action singularly on the critical areas ordinance. And that's that resolution that's in front of you that was drafted by our prosecuting attorney. And it essentially states that the good work that we passed in 2012 meets the expectations of the ecology environmental requirements. We believe that that might be the key to allowing ecology the grants that are different organizations within the county are applying for, so that we can keep doing that good environmental work. So this is a goal at trying to close that loop. And then once we've decoupled, so the request, the decision from the board would be, yes, proceed with this resolution. And that would decouple the CAO stuff from the comprehensive plan update, and we could move forward on that. And then the second piece that we're not asking for today, but to be thinking about, is to then, again, this is in an effort to keep the comprehensive plan update moving in service to our citizens. We've realized that there are some core elements of the comprehensive plan that must be done as required by the Department of Commerce that may get us out of overdue if we can accomplish those within the year. And then we, as Thurston County, always trying to go above and beyond, have added on some extra chapters within the comprehensive plan that we believe are going to require some additional public comment. And so the first point is decoupling the CAO, the Critical Areas Ordinance, from the comprehensive plan. The second point that we'll address at a later date is decoupling the core portions of the comprehensive plan from the potentially more complex that are going to require more public input. I just want to make sure that there is a framing in your mind so that when you come back and say, hey, we're decoupling again, that it's kind of a three-part program. But the first one that we need some direction on is the decoupling of the CAO, critical areas, from the comprehensive plan. I'll pass it to Allison or Travis to provide more detail and answer questions.
Thanks for that framing. Allison Osterberg, Senior Planner with Community Planning and Economic Development. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but in general, I think the thing to remember is that we're required to go through our periodic update of the comprehensive plan under the rules for growth management. A piece of the update that was part of the, under the state guidelines, is an update to our development code for the standards protecting critical areas. And the county completed a major update to its critical area ordinance in 2012. And when we created a scope of work for the comp plan update, we looked through all the checklists of things that the Department of Commerce says you'll need to do in this periodic update. And at that time, staff looked at the recently adopted CAO, felt that it met the current requirements, and didn't think that we would have anything additional. And so originally, the comp plan, we've kind of thought of it as this big package where we've put all these different things together. It's a package deal, and there would have been a line in the resolution adopting the whole comp plan that said it meets the qualifications or for our critical areas ordinance. Because we have the comp plan update has taken longer because some of the pieces of it have a lot of public interest. That getting to that point that we're able to check some of those boxes has taken longer, and so that's what this resolution is an opportunity for us to say, here's something that we've already done. We want to check this box because we're not anticipating needing to do any additional work on this piece. We meet the standards right now. So that's the idea behind it, but I'm happy to field any questions.
So it was done in 2012, and you've looked at it as of today and thought that if you were updating it, you wouldn't be updating it because it's already where it needs to be? Is that the thought?
If we were meeting so our deadline for our periodic update was June of 2016, and when, so we look at the standards in place at that time, and when we developed the scope of work, we felt that the CAO met those requirements. Yes.
And then, so this notion of decoupling in order to satisfy the Department of you referred to Department of Ecology and Department of Commerce. I'm not sure who's in control, but if that concept is based on what they've told you, or a hopeful thought? I mean, where did this idea come from that if we do it this way, we're going to get some benefit, get into compliance, and get these grants?
Yeah, I think the long and short is it's both based on our interpretation of GMA and what's required of county governments in order to be eligible for loans, grants under Section 170, 78, Chapter 78. And ultimately, just a quick overview that, recognizing that our update was due in June 2016, the state law basically provides that, counties or municipalities that are, have not completed their updates and review within that time period may not be eligible for grants. And those are the kinds of things that ecology is relying on. And we did, as Ramiro mentioned earlier, we did engage in an APA challenge because at the time Commerce was taking a stronger approach. They were saying we're out of compliance. We argued that no, they don't have authority to do so, and then we settled, and they basically are now the scorekeepers, so to speak. They track when things are submitted to them, legislative acts by different municipalities and local governments, other local governments. So what is, going back to the statute is that it does provide that you may be ineligible except if you have a critical areas ordinance that has protected critical areas. And if you have that in place, then you then become eligible. Oh. And so the thinking here is, the work's been done. The review was done. 2017, the previous board accepted a scope of work that did not include an update to the critical areas. During the conversation with Commerce, we did bring that up and say, hey, look, we did this, we have a scope of work, isn't this sufficient? And their position at the time was at least, hey, no, you actually need a legislative act. So essentially what's before you today is an example of that legislative act that basically confirms what, I would say we've already reviewed and confirmed back in 2017, but it's the official act in order to move us forward on that aspect of the update process. So that's a long-winded way of answering your question, but essentially, the reason why we're recommending this approach, it's up to your discretion, but the idea is to basically memorialize what we've already basically determined and going through an official legislative act in order to meet the requirements of state law. So that's...
I think the answer to my question was buried in that, which is that there's something in the statute that says that the critical areas is a separate, discrete piece that provides a track to eligibility for this money we're looking to get.
That's correct. That's
so,
correct. I mean, there's always the possibility, ecology. I just don't want to say, hey, by all means, that's how the letter of the law works. Ecology ultimately makes a determination on funding, but this is what we think is a good faith effort to do what's the appropriate way in order to pursue, credit, so to speak, for the good work that's been done in 2012.
Got it.
Thank you, Travis. I think there was also a question on commerce and ecology. And so just to kind of lay it out a little more functionally, commerce, as Travis stated, as the scorekeeper, has a matrix. And when we applied for grants to do good environmental work through one of our water resources programs, ecology said no to a grant based on us, the county, being out of compliance.
Through commerce.
So, right, exactly, thank you, through the scorekeeper, commerce. And so we pursued an action to say we're not out of compliance, so they changed that to overdue. And so we thought that would be the answer. So ecology can't then say you're out of compliance, grant is done. When we got the overdue, ecology then made the determination, oh wait, you haven't had a legislative action on your critical areas ordinance. So then they're saying, to get the grant, you've got to do this legislative action potentially, or you need to demonstrate that you've done the CAO. As Travis said, there was a conversation that we have with Commerce. So our attempt here is to have this legislative action now address that second column. And that's why there's kind of this commerce and ecology. Commerce is the scorekeeper, ecology is the decider of the money. That's a technical term.
Anything else?
No, I'm just going to read through this resolution.
I'll
Go
ask
ahead.
a few, and then maybe you'll come up with something else.
Sounds good.
How does this affect stakeholders, potential property owners that, I don't know, they want to put a driveway in or a horse barn or whatever they want to do, build a house? What kind of an impact are we talking about by taking this action? Does it help that individual, or does it throw up another barrier to them doing their thing?
I don't know about that specific case with the horse barn, But
I just used it as an example.
But the goal here is to receive grant funds to do good things in environmental protection. And that, is specifically how those different programs line out. At this point, I would pass it on to Allison, but knowing that the intent, as always within CPED, is to try and serve the citizens of Thurston County in a positive way.
Maybe this proposed legislative action has neutral impact.
Okay.
Because the critical area ordinance is already in place.
Okay.
So really, by you considering taking this action as a neutral action, it's just formalizing what has already been approved. So really, you're not considering adding, deleting, changing any of the critical area ordinance requirements. So it's a neutral action.
And maybe as I follow up on that, we're always looking at ways to make adjustments for one reason or another, and that doesn't prevent us or anything from continuing to look for those type of solutions then.
Yeah, that's something the legislative authority has
Okay.
the option to, include on the scope of work down the road.
I guess when we talk about commerce and kind of holding things up for us, how are others addressing this, other counties, other entities? And the reason I say that is when we got that original notice that we were out of compliance, there were like 90 others that were out of compliance. As things changed and we went to the overdue status, I guess, if you will, did that also apply to other jurisdictions? That's how they went as well? I mean, this was a broad fix, so to speak. So we're not being singled out here above and beyond where anybody else is. That's my concern.
Correct. The same criteria is being applied to all jurisdictions. So those who have not submitted, taken a legislative action on either their comprehensive plan or their critical areas update and submitted that to Commerce are listed as overdue and they've separated out those two into separate pieces. So the main comp plan and the critical areas ordinance in the scorekeeping that they're doing now at the Department of Commerce in that table will show as overdue, not just for Thurston County, but for any jurisdiction under GMA that is not, has not met those timelines.
Maybe for the county manager, as we contemplate taking action on a resolution, do we have to have a public hearing on a resolution like this, or is it just a legislative action?
And this not because because you're not changing the content of the critical area ordinance. You just take an affirmative actions to formally adopt that. So really, because all the public testimony, all the public hearing leading to the changes of the critical area ordinances is already done, completed. So you don't need a public hearing on this.
Okay. And then what type of dollars does that free up that is currently being withheld from us? I mean, what's going on, even with other jurisdictions, what's going on? I mean, I'm just trying to get a handle on this new move, and I'm not hearing that others have done this, right?
So I'm not aware of any of how it's affecting or what other jurisdictions might be doing or how it might be affecting other grants in other jurisdictions. We only know about the one grant that was awarded to Thurston County through the stormwater program, a stormwater capital program, through the Department of Ecology, and they awarded the grant, but then are withholding dispersing the funds until this is resolved. So it's just one project for us currently.
How much was that?
And I'm sorry, I don't have that number off the top of my head. Nick, you guys are saying 90,000? Yeah.
Yeah, and this action will solve that problem, though? Is that what
It's
I
an
mean?
attempt. It's an attempt to resolve the problem.
We hope.
Yeah, and I believe it will put us in a much stronger position that we have met all what we perceive to be the intent of the law. So then perhaps the Department of Ecology is running out of arguments not to disperse the money.
Please don't hold us to that 90,000. We think that that's what it is, but
Yeah.
we'll research it.
Thereabouts.
Commissioner, you have anything else on that?
So what's next? If we are good with this, it goes to a board agenda next week? Or
If you're okay, we'll bring this with an AIS to an upcoming board meeting, maybe to next week, see if you feel comfortable. And at that point, we'll revisit this item when Commissioner Hutchins is here next Tuesday, before you are formally taking an action.
So would we have an opportunity for a work session on this now, being this is just being presented to us, and apparently the board chair hasn't seen it at all yet, so give us a little time to digest this?
Yeah, either way, however you'd like to pursue. I can probably bring this item again on your agenda setting next Tuesday morning.
Is there a time-sensitive issue here that we're trying to get this done within 2 weeks or 3 weeks? And if we do, then things become available?
Not necessarily, but certainly the longer we wait, we will not be able to argue getting the money, and that's the point.
Okay. Anything more on this particular issue at this time?
I don't think so.
I will send this to Commissioner Hutchins though, so we can get a look at it before next Tuesday.
Sure.
Just kind of give him some overall information.
Maybe if the board is comfortable, we can bring an AIS for your consideration next week. But certainly you don't need to take an action on that. You can defer, delay.
So in other words, if we don't have further questions, we could move forward, or we could delay and have a little more discussion.
Yeah.
But it would be an option.
Right. And I will bring this item again on the agenda setting next Tuesday morning. And then we'll have another opportunity to have a conversation among yourselves.
My question is, just a little bit, is I'm always wondering what other entities are doing to solve problems. And apparently there were other entities that were also deemed out of compliance. Have you heard anything at all? How are they addressing this? Or are they waiting in the wings to kind of watch what we're doing and then they're going to do it? Or are we watching somebody else and we're not going to reinvent the wheel, or we are going to invent the wheel, I guess, at this point in time?
Well, you know, I think the wheel may look different depending where you are. In particular, because we have this somewhat unique situation where we do have a recently adopted critical areas ordinance, and so a lot of jurisdictions don't have that option, so to speak. But I will tell you this, that when we did file the lawsuit against Commerce, there was a pretty good level of interest that I got from my counterparts in other areas. Hey, how y'all looking at this?
Right.
What are you thinking about? You know, there are a lot of folks monitoring our progress at litigation, and so I think there was some relief when we got the settlement because a lot of other jurisdictions benefited from that, right? But I can't, you know, just to speak to the specific actions and whether others are not, you know, having grants that are denied. It's very possible, you know, that it's an item on their budget and they're just rolling with it. You know, but I know from a legal perspective, there's a lot of folks looking down the line, and you know, as these updates become more complicated, as there's more and more pressure for public input, you know, I think most jurisdictions agree that, hey, we need space to be able to make the right decisions, and I think that's the sentiment that I've heard, at least, you know, from a number of jurisdictions on this issue of GMA updates. So it's something that is keenly felt by most jurisdictions, but I can't speak to their specific strategy. I mean, sometimes it just depends on what their code looks like, what their budget looks like. But you know, I think staff are recommending this action as a proactive way for us to continue to engage without negative consequences to our budget, and that's essentially this first step. And I think. You know, but I can't speak to other jurisdictions that are taking a similar approach. If they have, I haven't heard about it, but I think that may be partly due to the uniqueness of our code sort of progression and development code where it is now.
When you say recently, are you referring to 2012 or 2016?
2012.
So that's recently?
Well, I'll let the planners speak to that. I mean, there's
And
a
the
variety.
comp plan amendment years, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if you think of it that way, the last time an update was out there was 2005. So it was actually closer to this update than the previous one.
Yeah.
And that's one way to look at it. I mean,
Okay.
and just to lay, reaffirm that this legislative act isn't your determination that things are set in stone. It's just an acknowledgement that the current critical areas meets the legal standard under the GMA as of the update in 2016. I know that's a bit of a garble, but it's a recognition. And if you go through the process for the other items and recognize that some things need to be changed, hey, that can still happen. So it's not as though you're set in stone and that you can't change your mind further. It's a recognition of what I think was a predetermination.
Yeah, it's a very narrow ask of us. I mean, I don't know whether the critical areas ordinance needs updating or not, but you said it didn't, and it's not in the thing, and we're just saying that that's what we did. So that seems to be straightforward.
It's a fairly narrow resolution.
Okay, well, I guess I'm satisfied for now.
So we'll
do we wanna-
revisit this item again next Tuesday when we review the agenda for April 2nd. So in the meantime, let's go ahead and submit an AIS for next Tuesday.
Thank you very much. I take it Department of Health is next on homeless regional response update?
Yes, this is an update. Last week, you didn't have the opportunity to hear from Keely Murno. And as I have it here, homeless coordinator made a typo because her title is Homeless Prevention and Affordable Housing Coordinator.
It's a mouthful.
Mouthful. So, and here's Keely to give you an overview as to what she has done since she was hired, which it's a lot.
Okay.
You have a 2-page report included in your packet. Keely will not be going through each of those items, obviously, but it certainly will be a summary of that report.
All right, this is Keely Marino, Public Health and Social Services, Homeless Prevention and Affordable Housing Coordinator, here to summarize this little bulleted report for you. So I'm not going to go through item by item, but when I first began in my first day on January 2nd of this year, I sat down with Gary Aiden in his office and he handed me a stack of items and we went over my job description. Many of the activities in my job description fall around not necessarily policies, but procedures around coordinated entry, making sure that that system's running well, the updates in the 5-year plan, which we just got updates again last week, the hazardous weather task force, as well as other sundry activities, including working alongside Colin DeForest at the City of Olympia and the City of Olympia in general to support their efforts and their work in downtown Olympia. I've also taken liberties to just reach out and meet with as many stakeholders as possible. So making as many efforts to reach out to our multiple jurisdictions. I have focused mostly on Tumwater and Lacey and Olympia at this point, and I have every intention of making my way out to Yelm and Bucota and Rainier and Tenino. That's upcoming, especially with the convening of the multi-jurisdictional groups around the 5-year plan. One of my biggest tasks in February was convening the Hazardous Weather Task Force through a Code Blue operation, which you probably remember, 12 days of extraordinary weather events that we had not had to operationalize as such until that point. And it was the first time there was a lot of centralized organization of that event. And so we were able to pull off a pretty significant response to a significant weather event with a lot of coordination, and I have an upcoming report that I would be glad to submit to you so you can look at kind of an overview of that 12-day process. With the 5-year plan, I've met with a core group of stakeholders that were involved heavily in the creation of the first 5-year plan that was approved in June of 2018, and then met with subsequent subpopulations, so the youth and young adult population, the family population. I will be meeting soon with law enforcement, convening a law enforcement focus group, and we'll be working with the City of Olympia at their invitation with their homeless response plan to coordinate that effort so that we are not duplicating efforts, but rather informing each other's plans as we move forward. I've also been asked to chair or co-chair the Balance of State Continuum of Care. Of course, we belonging to the Balance of State continuum of care. I've been attending the steering committee meetings and then was approached by Matt Lazar-Hart from Department of Commerce to potentially co-chair the subcommittee on racial equity, which I have convened my first meeting as of last week, which is exciting and important work and pretty central to the work of the writing of the 5-year plan, where they have added in their guidelines as of last Friday a pretty core element of addressing racial disparity in each of the communities that are required to write a 5-year plan. The coordinated entry system we've all heard a lot about over the last couple of months, and one of the things that I've really been highlighting and hoping to address is the need for a different approach to the single adult coordinated entry system. It's our biggest, most burdened population in our county, and needing some extra support. So I convened one meeting, we'll be meeting again on April 8th, with all sorts of stakeholders to address what is it that we can do to make sure that the single adult system is adequately being reached out to for coordinated entry, especially with the inclusion of mitigation sites and Plum Street villages and other efforts that are happening rather rapidly in response to the homeless crisis in our community. How do we incorporate an outreach element to our single adult coordinated entry providers? What else have I done? I've been invited, like I said, I've been invited to join City of Olympia in their efforts. I'll be attending their listening session. I've been invited to come to the community work group to present on the 5-year plan and what that means with regards to their homeless response plan. Keith Staley has invited me to help inform a Housing Summit 3, which is an upcoming summit he hopes to put forth, which is a multi-jurisdictional effort in response to last year's Housing Summit 2. That's hopefully going to be happening in the next several months. And I've been working a lot with Colin DeForest to talk about what do mitigation sites look like, what do we have, what do we have available to us, and what does it actually mean? And so one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, and I know I mentioned last week the pros and cons between the Mottman site and the Carpenter Way site, is we have a growing and very entrenched homeless encampment culture in our county. And by that I mean we do have the visible camps downtown, which I've helped with those camp evictions or sweeps, as however you would like to refer to them. But there's still several camps that are very well entrenched all around our county, all with folks that are outside of the shelter system. And as those camps continue to be cleaned, where will those people go? Like where will our unsheltered citizens in Thurston County go? So that's one of my biggest conundrums, and been having conversations around what we need to do in order for a mitigation site to occur, and then what does that mean in terms of long-term sustainability. Been doing a lot of research on what moving people from encampments can look like if it's planful, and so just kind of doing more on the research side of that. And then the Greater Regional Outreach Workers League is another group that I've convened with local outreach providers to get out into the community at large to do more outreach to encampments we may not be familiar with, to build relationships with those folks, to see when we've developed a survey to determine where did they move from, how many times have they moved camp, if they were offered a shelter bed, would they take it, if not, why? So just getting a general sense of the folks in the encampment, what is it about shelters that are unappealing, what kind of housing program would be something that they'd be interested in, that kind of thing. So that group is just kind of getting off the ground.
Growl.
If you're gonna have an acronym, you gotta make it fun.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. So that's kind of a summary of these 3 pages. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
I guess I would have one thing, but go ahead, Commissioner, if you've got something first.
I got a lot, so go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. I guess what I would ask, because we're doing the public's work and the public might be interested in this, and I know they are interested in this topic.
Absolutely.
So Is there any chance you could put a little addendum on here, maybe of all the acronyms that are on
Oh,
this?
absolutely.
And the reason I say that is there's going to be a lot of people, I see a few that I don't know what it is.
Right.
And I bet if a citizen was to take a look at this, they would be thoroughly confused.
Yes.
So if there was just some way that we could have just a little glossary of acronyms that are in here and what those are referring to, that would be a big help. Did you get a chance to see Eric Johnson? He's a Como reporter. Did you get a chance to see that special?
I did.
Did we get any beneficial information that maybe would help us go in one direction or another? It seemed that was quite critical of the inability of the criminal justice system or government in total of helping these individuals, either helping or holding them accountable, which seemed to compound the problem. And I'd like to make sure that we don't head down that same path. I mean, I want to help those that are willing to receive some help, and if it's just a lifestyle they've chosen, so they don't have to be responsible, I don't want to make life easy for them just to be able to move in on private property and make life miserable for everyone that surrounds them. So I think we've got several categories of individuals. We've got drug-dependent individuals. We have mental health individuals. We've got that individual that's just a poor soul that has fallen on hard times for one reason or another and would like to get themselves straightened out. So that's kind of my concern, that we just don't talk about it and not do much about it. So.
I've done a lot of reading in some of the responses to that presentation, and I think of course, it's a very complicated scenario across the board. I think it's important to look at the research that has come out of HUD, usage, and I can't remember, United States Interagency, something on homelessness. I don't remember what the C stands for, excuse me. I'm not really good with acronyms either. And best practices that have come out of not just providers, but from the federal government about best approaches on ending or mitigating the harms of homelessness, on top of listening to the frustrations of our citizens. And so one of the things that I read today, in fact, in one of the responses to that presentation, was that what it highlighted more than anything else is just an underlying frustration. And that frustration needs to be listened to. And I think that's one of the things that the City of Olympia is doing, is allowing that voice to come forward and be heard. And I think that there's, on the one hand, there's the law enforcement side, there's the root causes of homelessness, there's the evidence-based research on best practices for addressing homelessness, on top of just our citizens' frustration and the ways that it's impacting their business and their residences, et cetera. I also had a conversation with, I can't remember her name, but somebody from the Healthcare Authority around that element of treatment and how the county stacks in terms of, if we were just to say medical assisted treatment or jail, what would that look like in our county? And so we had a pretty exhaustive conversation about some of the barriers that are in place for folks on the streets accessing treatment, as well as some suggestions of how we could address it from her perspective. And I would defer to her. I would love to give you her name. I'm not a treatment expert whatsoever, but some of the barriers for medical assisted treatment, which is very much highlighted in that Como News presentation or show, is that there is very little and very, very limited inpatient treatment for anyone. Northwest Resources is our only inpatient treatment facility in Thurston County. And so being that there's only one, it's difficult to get into for anyone, whether they are on the streets or housed. And evidence, as she was saying, shows that outpatient is just as successful as inpatient for this type of medical assistant treatment. So it's a matter of folks getting access to it. We have the Bupe Clinic downtown, the Buprenorphine Clinic at the CRC, Capital Recovery Center. That is just started and will, in the same day that folks come in to be assessed, we'll be able to give them a prescription in that moment. So medically assisted treatment, they don't need insurance, they don't need ID, they can just go in there and get the treatment that they need, which is excellent. The barriers to that when you're on the street is that it's so readily available. So if you're a person who's trying to remain sober and to go through outpatient treatment and not in a stable living environment, it can be exponentially more difficult to remain sober. So it's very complicated. I think that it had some points that I really like to investigate further. A lot of that about the access to treatment and
Okay.
how accessible really it is.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thanks. So one comment from the beginning, when you said you're going to be moving to South County contact, just something that I'm learning as commissioner is don't forget Rochester, because they don't have a council that you're going to be able to connect to, but it's a community that, in a sense, we have a special obligation or role as the county government because we directly govern them. So sometimes you're going to end up probably doing more work to try to connect to that community because you don't have the structure of the incorporated council. So that's just kind of how we're structured. I'm glad that you're doing the research and looking into the issues you're doing, because it's what I think we need to do. I mean, one thing that this is just a comment, one thing that I'm hoping that you can provide us as we go through this process is just giving us, of course, advisory direction for our homeless response. I mean, we've got options we've got mitigation sites and what that looks like. We've got Tiny Home Village and Quixote Village, and we've got that model. And we've got, I had a presentation, and I think Commissioner Hutchings, and I don't know about Commissioner Edwards, but there's the shelter-in-place concept where we would potentially support faith-based organizations to go and provide services directly. And of course, that gets controversial depending on where the land is. But anyway, these are different options, different models of where to put resources. And I'm struggling to figure out where those resources need to go. So I hope, it sounds like you are focused on this, and I hope that you'll be able to provide us direction and advice on that. I know you're familiar with the shelter-in-place concept, and any thoughts about that you have today or in the future, I'd be happy to hear. You mentioned the single adult system, and you're focusing on how to make it work better. What are the next steps in that thought? I mean, is it?
So in the meeting that was convened, we discussed how to make outreach work in terms of coordinated entry. So instead of focusing on in-reach, so meaning sidewalk is there from 10 to 2 at the community care center Monday through Thursday, that can still remain, but then we need to get folks out, going to the new family resource center in Lacey and connecting with them, and to the vet hub. Oh, well, they've got someone there, but.
So it's not like anyone's doing anything wrong, it's more expanding the outreach. Okay.
Yeah, to be more creative with the ways in which we do it.
Cool. Question on, you said you were working with Colin on the mitigation site. I mean, I'm curious, because at the very beginning, the email that came in January was, can you guys provide land?
Right.
In fact, it came in December.
Right.
And now we've gotten more involved, and you've done an analysis of sites. What is Olympia saying today, 4 months later, about what a collaboration or cooperation? Is it just they need a piece of land and they're going to run it? Is that still the concept, or are we talking about a more involved partnership?
That's a good question. Currently, we've been talking more about a more involved partnership, a multi-jurisdictional effort, especially if we think of just, for example, Martin Way and Carpenter Road. We've got Lacey, and then the city of Olympia has adjacent properties, but they, according to Colin DeForest, is assured that he would really push that Olympia would have their hands in that, in the administration or making that function as well. So county, Lacey, Olympia. So I think right now they are just open to pretty much anything, because it's as soon as they move that 4th Avenue encampment, whenever that happens, and there's rumors that the jungle is also going to be moved at some point pretty soon, and that's a significant number of people that will be most likely sleeping in the corridors of downtown Olympia, if not moving out into the other camps that are pretty well established. So I think that they are, and I don't want to speak for them, but conversations I have with Colin is how can we do this together?
Okay. I just want to make sure my thinking
Yeah,
was lining
yeah.
up with what the conversations you're having.
Yeah.
This Growl group, you started this group?
Yeah.
And who else is involved?
So the Crisis Recovery Center has the PATH program. I don't know what PATH stands for, but PATH program and several other outreach efforts. Partners in Prevention Education has mobile advocacy as well as other outreach efforts. We have our own, Patrick Judkins goes to just provide that from the Thurston County Needle Exchange, just provide that perspective. They don't do much outreach. Community Youth Services attends, and Just Housing attend. So it's a pretty broad group.
Crisis Recovery Center?
Yes.
And there's Capital Recovery Center?
That's what I meant.
That's what you meant, okay.
Yes. There's crisis.
Don't do that to me, Keely.
I know. CRC also, Crisis Residential Center is Haven House or Community Youth Services. So I always get them conflated.
Well, there are, multiple
I know.
organizations with the same acronym, and that really creates
Absolutely,
issues.
yeah.
So, all right. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
the update.
absolutely. And I'm happy at any point to talk about sheltering in place because it's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about. So.
We're probably out of time today,
Okay.
but I think we'll get there. Maybe next week you can talk about that. When
Sounds great.
Hutchings is back, Commissioner
Yeah.
Hutchings.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Keely. And I guess the county manager is going to give us a flex unit project update.
When a couple of weeks ago, we the staff had a conversation with the board and requested so much for the pause button on the project to give us the opportunity to start, put a fence run in terms of the cost, the scope of work, and how we can move forward. Since then, the project manager resigned. You have an item on your agenda today to reclassify that to capital project manager 3, which requires certifications and a different set of skills, which those skills are needed but necessary in a sense to bring this project to operation. During the conversation, you asked if we can look at how the FJC, the Family Justice Center, located in Bunyan area, considering there's the sales, unoccupied sales by juveniles, that we can probably go through the process of utilizing vacant cells to accommodate adult inmate population. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Sorry. Do I have to repeat everything? Hopefully not. So on that conversation, when we asked the commissioners to give us a couple of months to put our hands around so we can come back as to with the specifics as to how we need to move forward on the flex unit, whether the number of beds and how much money we have to implement this project, you ask staff to go back and give you a perspective as to what will be the options, if there are any, to see if we can utilize the FJC, the Family Justice Center, to either remodel or do something to utilize for adult inmate population. So in your packet right here, if you flip the page on page 2, there is a very high-level analysis of the cost they might require to go through that process. And there is 2 options. Is how we're going to take the juvenile inmate population out of the FJC, finding a suitable location, and all the costs associated with that approach, and also how we're going to be remodeling the FJC to accommodate a adult population. So, and again, this is a high-level estimate, The total cost is $23 million. That was in 2016 costs, which includes the remodel of the FJC at about $15 million, and the new juvenile facility close to $9 million.
What was
And
that first figure you said?
is the conversion of the remodel of the FJC.
Yes, what was that figure, the dollar amount?
$15 million.
15.
Yeah. And that
Okay.
that is included in the back of this document.
Yes,
On the second page.
Yep.
Second page.
yep, okay.
So at this point, the total effort is close to $23.5 million to accomplish that. And so that's that. In terms of perhaps the budget and related to that, the flex unit, even as at this point, the expansion of the current jail has not even come close to that approach. You also have a letter from the Superior Court, the presiding judge, Judge Schaller, outlining some of the concerns that perhaps by considering moving the juvenile population outside of the FJC, the Family Justice Center, to a different location. In great detail, she outlines a couple of, first of all, outlines the law require the Superior Court as the one who manages that facility. I'll give you a little bit of history as to how that was combined between the family juvenile courts and the FJC. And back in, I believe, in 1995, the citizens of the county approved a measure to build the facility. But most of all, she highlights some of the concerns of what I call decoupling from the Family Justice Center, the juvenile facilities outside, transportation issues, oversight issues, and really misses the opportunity to address the whole issue between the family and the juveniles, which is, from her perspective, is tied to each other.
Can I interrupt? I think you said this, and it just got by me. This is an old memo, right? It says
Yes.
February of 2015. So we know that, for example, options C, D, E, and F, I know that you put that on hold, but I mean, it's potential that those numbers are totally different, which means that the numbers for option A and B could be totally different.
Thank you. And this is, I want to revisit that because we did a brief analysis to that. So, and that's thank you, because that leads me to the question that I have for the board. Because if there is additional information that you would like to explore this option,
Yeah.
and certainly there is not an expert in the county who can get through that process, so I will need time, and I will need money to hire a consultant to further explore that. Because at this point, as you see, the new juvenile facility has a $9 million cost back in the 2016 dollars. We don't know where that could be.
Right. I mean, if the 11 million two is now 41 million, then I only don't want to even think what the 23 million is now. I mean, again, we know those numbers aren't really solid, but
Yeah. So I'm just bringing back some of the requests that you asked for us, and in addition to that is the letter from Superior Court related to this particular option. So here we are, and again, the question that I asked for the board, if you would like staff to further explore this option to move juveniles outside of the FJC. And again, I will ask the board to give us time, I don't know, months probably, and also allocate some budget authority to hire a consultant. Because again, none of us in the county staff has the ability to determine what will be a good feasible location as to where we can relocate juveniles. Because it's not just finding a location, then the operating aspects of that facility needs to be taken into account as well.
here's where I'm at on this. I don't even know where we're at with the original proposal, because we got those those revised costs and the program manager quit or whatever, and you said put on hold, and you didn't think those numbers had good analysis behind them and any validity. So I want to know where we're at with what we originally planned to do. If that turns out to be as bad as what we thought, then I'm open to thinking about these other options and not taking anything off the table.
So that's
but right
what
now, I don't even really know where we are.
Yeah, and that is the point that I asked 2 weeks ago to give us time to put our hands around.
Yeah.
As to give you the information, clear and practical information as to where we are in terms of the cost and how many beds we could afford.
So my thought is to table this concept. I don't want to rule it out because it may end up being a pretty good option, but I just don't. I don't want to spend more of the taxpayers' money on more consultants when we haven't even figured out where we are with the original approach.
And that is coming in the next 2 months, hopefully, to give you
Okay.
good balance.
That's all. That's my 2 cents.
What was, and you might not know these numbers because you're relatively new, but what was the occupancy of the juvenile center shortly after it was constructed? Do you know the answer to that? No. I mean, it was
So the actual population?
Yeah, like it was 50 or 60 or whatever it was.
I don't know.
Today, it's running around 10. But it's my understanding that the staffing has not changed much. Okay, that's...
Actually, I can address the
Okay.
staffing.
Okay.
The number of detention officers was reduced, and those resources were shifted to be program people who support youth programs, which is part of why the beds are empty.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we also did cut FTEs.
I would like to know what those numbers are myself. I'd just like to get a sense of, okay, we got rid of correction staff per se, and we put those into individuals that worked with these young people to keep them from being incarcerated, basically,
Right.
And that's what happened. So, but it's been pretty consistent around 10 that we're incarcerating in a facility that has 90 beds.
More or less, yes.
Yeah,
There's,
right, yeah,
there's a
up or down.
range,
Yep.
you know, somewhere between 5 and 15 on
Yep.
any given day.
Yep, that's right. So, from the taxpayer's perspective, whom I'm here to represent, it is not good expenditure of tax dollars and use of a facility. I know the judges aren't going to be thrilled if we propose something different, but we're responsible to the taxpayers more than the judges, in my estimation. So I'm wondering, we have property over there, right next door, close proximity, same parcel, however you want to look at it. I would like to know what it would take to build a bunkhouse short of any other, you know, I don't know how secure it needs to be, but maybe at different levels, 5 of the cells are very secure and 5 aren't. I don't know. But I think there's a way that we could house the juveniles that we have in custody and feel that we need to keep in custody and free up those 90 beds to be utilized, for an example, for a different category of inmate. And having run jails in the past, females are a problem. And maybe we could utilize that facility to house all the adult females for the whole gamut of what they're in for. And if we were able to do that, that could free up 100 beds over in the main facility. And the reason for that is sometimes you only have one person in a cell because of a particular problem, and you got 4 empty cells in that area because of the female-male process that we have to keep separated. So I'm hoping that there are other solutions. I don't know what it would cost to build a bunkhouse. Could we build a bunkhouse for $1 million? I don't know.
So,
So,
Go ahead.
And that goes back to my request to you, because all those are ideas that you have, and county staff doesn't have the expertise to give you the right answer. Because it's not just about constructing a facility, whatever that is.
Right.
It's about the operating aspects of that facility that nobody in the staff has the ability to give you the right answers that you're looking for. So the question that I will ask the board, if in fact this is something you would like to explore even further, you need to give me the tools, additional money to hire a consultant to do so.
Okay, I haven't followed up on the rest of where I'm going with that. So you're hiring, you're contemplating, and I think we are approving an upgraded position to oversee what's going to go on over at the adult detention facility as far as the flex unit. Why can't that person also take a look at what's going on over at the juvenile? Is there property there? Is there a parcel that we could put a facility on for much less money than what we're doing today? Let's get some work out of that individual. I don't know if he's going to be a contract or a hourly employee, but let's get some work out of him and get some recommendations for us so we can make a decision.
Commissioner, if I may, it's not about the number of hours the project manager can spend. It's the level of expertise.
Okay.
Because the project manager is not designing the jail.
No.
It's a consultant who has the expertise to design the jail, and this person is going to be managing that contract. So when it comes to the option of relocating a juvenile facility, the project manager, whomever is going to be hired, is not going to have the expertise to give you the answer. So we ended up on the same situation to hire a consultant to give you the answers that you need. Because that is my concern at this point is saying yes on something that I cannot deliver without the support from the board to additional resources. That's really where I am.
Okay. I'm willing to work with you on that, but we need to do something. Here we're contemplating putting a ballot measure in front of the public before too long. County government does not have a good reputation. Government in general does not have a good reputation in spending taxpayers' money appropriately. All I'm asking is let's try to explore a way that we can move forward, get adequate information. If that means you need to come back to us and say, well, we could hire a used-to-be corrections officer that he worked in the juvenile and he worked in the adult and he was a probation officer and now he's a counselor and now we can hire him and he can review. I don't know. I'm not trying to pretend that I do know. But we need more information, I think, is what I'm hearing in frustration from my fellow commissioner. I don't know. I think for us to make a valid, informed decision and not waste the taxpayers' money.
I'm not in a mission to waste taxpayers' money.
I know you're not. But in the past, that has happened. Let's admit it.
I'm trying to be responsive to the desires of the board, but also I need to be realistic that I will not be able to promise something that I cannot deliver without the support from the board.
I know.
And this is where, in the conundrum that I am right now, you have, Commissioner Edwards, you have ideas, and how we can give you a good sense of how much those ideas will cost. I don't have the avenues at this point to provide you that.
Okay.
And that's what, in 2 months, we're going to give you a good perspective as to what the flex unit project is going to work. But again, if when Commissioner Hodges, I can probably bring this item again, and if that's the direction of the board, for me to further explore this, then I will ask you to provide me with additional resources.
From my perspective, I'm not satisfied that the Superior Court that oversees juvenile, I'm not willing to just accept that they don't like the idea of doing something. I don't even know what something is. we need to do something. I don't know what that is myself, but I think we need to explore that. Having those empty beds sitting there, to me, is misuse of public funds. So I want to get something done.
I would just add that setting aside everything that the judges laid out in their letter, just setting it aside, I'm interested in this idea, I think for the same reasons as Commissioner Edwards, but I'm interested in it if it prevents a substantial cost savings. Nothing in this memo is telling me that there's going to be any cost savings, because it says that, again, maybe this $9 million for a new juvenile facility, and you're talking about a bunkhouse or something. Maybe we ratchet that down by stripping it down, but it's still looking at $15 million in 2015 cost estimate to rehab the facility to be appropriate for adults. So that's not saving us any money. So I mean, that's where I'm interested in saving us money. I hadn't seen this memo before, so I wasn't able at the last meeting to chime in with those numbers in hand. So at this point, again, just to repeat my position, I think that I want to see where we're at with the flex unit that we originally designed. If it's going to cost $41 million, then I'm not going to be interested in that, but we don't know that yet. So,
and I guess I'll just carry that one step farther. We are behind the 8 ball. We've got a threat of litigation. We don't know where that's at, and so we're being forced into doing something. But I don't want some kind of a choice where I have to make a choice. Do I want to get hung with a new rope or an old rope? I don't want to get hung at all.
So maybe a path forward will give us time, maybe a couple months, until we can have our hands around on the current flex unit project, cost estimates and everything else. We'll bring that information to the board in a formal briefing, and also we'll bring those options again. And then at that point, then I will ask the board as to how they would like to proceed.
who did this cost estimate in 2015 for the juvenile conversion stuff?
That was Central Services. It was a very high level.
Okay.
Very high level, just to give a sense of magnitude.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess if anything, you probably came out from this little discussion that we're frustrated about. We need to do something.
Well, and also I'm also committed to do something in response to the board's direction.
We can bring this up on next Tuesday with Commissioner Hutchings here.
If you like, yeah, I'll bring this again.
Do we have a work session on Friday?
Planning session?
Planning session?
But I don't have this
You
item
won't have a
here.
lot of information, but maybe we could at least just talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, we can. I can bring the same information.
We'll
on
have 3
Friday.
commissioners there,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gone Thursday, not Friday.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
here Friday.
Okay, well, now let's talk about reorganization.
Finally, we got to this point. Thank you, commissioners. And before you have this attachment.
Yes.
Yes. Right.
And I'd like to formally introduce a couple of options for you. The first one is the current, and this is related to the organization, related to the county manager and the direct reports. In this current, obviously, is what we have right now. We have the assistant county manager and the office, the budget office. And then you have all the departments that are direct report to the county manager. And Maria's here to answer any questions.
To help us.
And then we have on the sidelines, we have the executive assistant, public information office, the front office, and the new position which we have the economic development. So the options before you, options 1 and options 2, the gist of those 2 options is not filling the vacant position for the central services director that we have right now. So that is the premise of the options number 1 and options number 2. So option number 1, what it does is creates a new assistant county manager position. And the reorganization will be such divided in what we call internal versus external services. The internal services, it will be in this case under Robin Campbell, Human Resources, Information Technology, County Facilities, which is one of the units within the current Central Services Department. We have the budget and rates, the records contracts and mail, also part of the Central Services, and the equipment rental, which is also part of the Central Services Department right now. And we also add a strategy and performance position, which is also needed within the whole context to move forward on the strategic objectives of the county's strategic plan. So on the yellow, on your right-hand side, with the new assistant county manager, then it will oversee the departments that provide an external service to the citizens. That will be emergency services, public health and human services, CPED, public defense, and public works. And also you have right there county projects next to public works. And the intent to that is, at least from my point of view, formalize how we conduct project management activities in the county. So we take all the project managers there in the facilities and move it into the larger context of public works, because managing a project is managing a project regardless what it is, whether it's IT, facilities, or roads. And I think that is an attempt to formalize the project management activities across the county. And the Executive Assistant, Public Information Office, Front Office, and Economic Development remains the same, all direct reports to the county manager. Option number 2. This is a little bit of a variation of option number 1. And this is more related to be cognizant of the current workloads that we have and the current perhaps restrictions on the funding. And option number 1 requires additional funding, and perhaps an option number 2 may not require additional funding because the savings of the Central Services Director could accomplish option number 2. And the option number 2, we have the Assistant County Manager. They will oversee the budget and rates. And this, again, delegating some of the authority that Robin Campbell has to another structure. What it does is really brings a consistent way how we establish the rates and charges across the county. And the other divisions of the Central Services will be aligned to the Assistant County Manager, that is the records and mail contracts, county facilities, equipment, ER&R. And the strategy and performance position is also part of that structure. The other departments continues to be as a direct report to the county manager. And the variations is we look in creating what we call an operational support manager. That is just a label. We need to define what that position really means. And the intent of that position will be a direct report to the county manager. They will allow to deliver special projects across the county. And that's really the intent, because there is a lot of strategies. Perhaps the county manager at this point doesn't have the time to implement across the county. And with the data structure, we can probably see how the realignment is. The economic development, or perhaps the strategy and performance positions will be a report to that, as well as we'll have to see how the PIOs in the front office will be part of that structure as well. So I briefly had a conversation with each one of you, presented this option, these 2 options. And this really, at this point, we'll bring this item for your planning session on Friday again to further have a conversation with you. This is an attempt to formally introduce those 2 options for you in front of the public. My intent that was last week, just didn't have the time to do it. So any reactions, first reactions of those proposals?
My first reaction is on the strategy and the performance. Aren't we kind of depending now on department directors to individually be aware and oversee that they're kind of following along in that regard right now?
In a way, but what is lacking is providing that support to the directors as well, because as we have our plates full, the directors really don't have the staff and the time to go through a formal performance indicators and performance measures. Furthermore, we really don't have, how we have OpenGov, for instance, is an application that we have, an external application that the citizens can go in and manipulate, in a way, the data as to how the county government operates. So really, this person is going to help us to facilitate, to a great extent, that public face.
This would be someone with expertise in performance and performance management. And as a county, we have very few pockets of expertise in this area. I think that support in this area would complete the, if you think of the management cycle, they would help tie it together to the budget. It would facilitate data-driven decision-making. I mean, one of the things that the board is always asking for is we need more data. The person in this position would help to tie all that together.
So if we had that person, we'd have all that information I'm worried about juvenile corrections and empty beds.
It's not the kind of information, but we would be able to talk about population and success of juvenile programs. We would have that kind of data, not how much would it cost to redesign a building.
Okay, I mean, I make light of it, I'm sure.
Sure.
But I'm wondering about that initially as we move forward on reorganization. That's kind of what I'm hung up on right now.
So that's a new FTE, basically.
Yeah.
And then we'd have the assistant county manager, potentially, or so we're losing a central services director, but we're gaining 2 other people.
Right. So in option number 1, it will cost more. In option number 2, perhaps it will be cost neutral.
And those are the 2, that's the cost piece of this organization, is that person versus one other person, or two other people who are less expensive versus 2 other people that are more expensive.
Absolutely.
What about the projects person over in Public Works? Isn't that going to be a person?
Those are existing positions.
That is an existing position.
2 positions that will move to Public Works.
That are currently in central services.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll take those, like the project manager for the flex unit. Instead of being in central services, we would put that in a capital projects or county projects office or unit.
We already have the project management office there.
Right. So we put those people over there.
I don't have anything more than when you and I talked. I mean, my first question was to ask Robin. I mean, you're the one that's going to be doing something different under this. I wanted to know what you thought about which one made sense and which one you'd prefer.
So I did some research, and I actually brought a number of different options, but I researched county organizations with the thought that 1 or 2 would kind of be the norm across the country, and they're not. Every county, I mean, there's as many variations of organization as there are counties. So given that, my personal opinion is that option number 1 is where the county ought to be moving toward. That frees up your county manager for more strategic, more responsive, more ability to interact with external partners. I think that this is the best way to go. But given the fact that option 1 would probably cost us and we'd have to figure out a way to get the more money, option 2, there are also a few other challenges with option 1, but option 2 is the first step toward getting you there, in my opinion. And as far as taking on more responsibilities, me personally, I would say that there were 6 months when I did this, 6 months.
Of option 2.
Yeah, option 2. So there were 6 months in, I think it was like 2013 or 2014, about 5 years ago, that I was the interim director for central services in addition to the budget duties. At that time, I didn't have a strong budget person, and I certainly didn't have two. IT was part of central services, and we built the budget in that time, making some pretty difficult decisions, and it was fine. So it really comes down to a matter of delegation, and I've already started a little list of things that I could delegate to have capacity for this. So I think that we could make it work.
If we, and I'm not saying we don't need it, but if we incrementally approached this and we didn't create a new position for the strategy performance block, but maybe did that farther down the road, then would it be closer to a wash? I mean, that's one FTE.
It would, but we would still, so what we're doing right now to advance this is your front desk person, Whitney, is gaining expertise in this area. She's already launched the first training on how to use OpenGov and did an excellent job of doing that, by the way. But she's already gaining that expertise and starting to provide that kind of assistance, but it's too much. You can't do that and do the work of the front desk. So I think that the board has to weigh, you know, our desire to be strategic, which I think is extremely important as you look to the future. And do you want to make that investment in the county being strategic, data-driven, and having that kind of capacity? Could we get there and think about adding that position later? Sure.
Yeah, that's it's all the options that you have available to you, and this is just an attempt, you know, to bring in some options. But within the whole context, there's many variations that you can probably choose how you want to do this. Whether it's phase 1, phase 2. But I think the bottom line of option 1 and option 2 is most likely a budget neutral based on the savings of the director.
Right.
Option 1 is not.
But I like your point that those are really two separate.
Right.
We could go with option 1 because we like the structure. Robin just said that's really where we need to be structurally, and we could aspire to add the strategic FTE at a later point. It doesn't disrupt the structural change, if that's what we had to do.
Yeah, that's all the options. So I will bring this, I have already this item on your planning session for Friday, and that will give you more opportunity to discuss this.
I just want to throw out to the broader group, I let Ramiro know that I got input from an elected official who said, well, we're the customers for central services, and we should be consulted on any change in how you're going to restructure that department. So,
sure, that's.
With all due respect to that elected official, how you structure your direct report is up to the board, and the day that an elected official allows you input on how they structure their offices is the day that they should get to input how you structure your
Just as a courtesy issue, I'd like to know, are you committed at noon to get out of here? So I'm just trying to figure out the time frame.
I'm good.
You're good?
Yep.
Okay, I'm good. I can stay until 2.
Yep. So it's going to take us a little time
Just got to go run over and cast my conservation district vote.
go through the public testimony.
No contested races, is there?
No.
No, okay.
So let me begin by, and this is related to the public testimony you have received from Mr. Pettit.
Where are you at on the agenda here?
Public testimony.
Number 5.
Okay, good enough. Just wanted to see where it was all fitting in. And, I don't know. Okay, we can take a break in a little bit, maybe. Is this intentional so we don't have time to read it before we?
No, you got this on your email.
No, no.
Today, I read
Yeah,
this one.
but today.
So this goes like this. So I'll give you copies later. Sorry. So let me begin with the letter. Back in February 12th, he submitted a letter which we responded to Mr. Pettit. And that
Okay,
was,
which one are you referring to right now?
I'll give you the history first. Let me walk you through the history. I'm not referring to those letters yet. Give me a minute.
Okay.
Give me a minute.
Okay, I was just trying to find it.
February 12th, as you may recall, we submitted a letter which I responded, and it was related to the ordinances in which the fees for the Henderson. It was more about the timing, which I responded, as you may recall.
On that ordinance issue.
On the ordinance issue, that was resolved. And the heels of me responding to that letter, he submitted another letter, which is that was last Tuesday.
Is that the
That's
19th?
March 19th,
Okay.
2017. So
Okay.
before you is a response letter that I'm planning to send out to Mr. Pettit today.
Dated the 25th?
Yeah. So the March 19th letter, he raises a couple of issues. Is the yearly update to the Henderson in coordination with the health officer. This letter addresses that in terms of we do go through an annual update, and we do coordinate that with the health officer.
Okay.
Okay.
Basically, are you saying in your
March
your
25th?
25th letter, you're addressing his 19th letter,
That is correct.
and we're meeting all the deficiencies that he points out in the 19th letter? We're taking care of those, is that what you're saying?
Well, we have addressed that. We believe that we have responded to his letter on the 25th.
Yeah, and what, was he right? Was he wrong? Or I'm just curious.
Well, I don't want to get to that point because there's more to it.
Okay.
And you will see that on the letter that you received today.
Okay.
Okay. So I was planning to respond this afternoon, and I was hoping to send this via a lunch hour sign to Mr. Pettit in response to the March 19th letter, and I was going to highlight the response this afternoon, as I did the previous meeting to the letter that he submitted on the 12th. So today you receive a letter dated March 26th. He makes a couple of comments, referred to perhaps that you have not had a conversation related to his comments because he didn't see anything on this agenda. And it is included on the public testimony as you review on every Tuesday when we go through before I formally respond in the afternoon. So I will try to address that this afternoon, that in fact you have read your letters, you have read the responses, and you have addressed their concerns in a way. But the key issue of the March 26th letter this morning, he brings a little bit of the legality of the fees, which we have gone through our attorneys, and before the board actually took an action back in 2017, the attorneys looked at the legality of you being able as a legislative authority to implement those fees. So at this point, obviously, is a difference of opinion from what he perceives to be, whether it's illegal or illegal, those fees related to the Henderson area. And I don't think we need to get to the point of formally respond whether the county has taken legal steps in implementing those fees back in 2017.
Okay, I guess my question is, apparently you've talked with legal. We haven't heard anything from legal about this yet. is this a situation where we may want to have an executive discussion?
Yeah, we could.
On some of this with legal to kind of get a sense of where we're at. You know, you say a difference of opinion. Those oftentimes are decided by a court, those differences. So if maybe that would be the more prudent way to address I don't know if you call it a potential legal challenge to something that we've done. So I guess we can do that in an executive session and discuss some strategy that we wouldn't want to necessarily discuss in public. Is that the intent of an executive session?
I mean, we can have an executive session and you can hear from legal counsel as to the steps the board took in implementing those fees. But
We could have that in open.
yeah, we can have that in open session. But I think the key question is, I believe Mr. Pettit, as well as any other citizens, can file a claim against the county and any particular matters related to county business at any time. And if Mr. Pettit believes that in fact there's something the county has wrongfully implemented those fees, I think he has the ability to put that in the court system, and the county at that point will formally respond to that litigation if that is the case. Because I don't believe that we need to develop a strategy as to how we can defend ourselves at this point if not a formal litigation has been filed against the county.
And would you be able to say that you're pretty comfortable in your position that we've kind of covered everything right? My concern is I hate to have you in a situation where you get a letter on the 26th and you're expected to respond to it on the 26th in a public setting, and that's,
no,
I don't know if that gives you adequate time.
No, and I was not planning to respond to that. I was just going to plan to respond one item of this March 26th. Stated that he's, including me, has chosen not to communicate any actions being done to you, which this is the setting in which I bring all the items to you. So I'd like to address that this afternoon, that in fact you do go through the public testimony that you receive, and I do bring some of the proposed responses to you that I'm planning to provide in the afternoon. So I'd like to at least address that. Related to whether it's the legality of the fees or not, I think that may require a different conversation. And again, I believe if Mr. Pettit believes the county is in the wrong, you know, he might be taking the opportunity to challenge the county in court.
I didn't read anything new substantively in the new letter. It's more about that we didn't consider what he said before. So you're going to address that, and I wouldn't think that you need to respond to the new letter other than just orally.
Yeah.
I mean, now that I read this, it's, you know, I was wondering whether we were doing the annual review. That was my big question.
Yeah,
and if that's happening, then I don't think there's any other substantive issue.
It does, and this is the review of the maps, because as we go through and review the boundaries.
Because the question, I mean, he thinks that if there's data suggesting there's not an impact, then that should be the basis for an adjustment. That's not really what this addendum says. It says update the boundary based on information regarding drainage flow and the location of other improvements, which would be a conversion to sewer or an installation of new sewer. So I don't think he's got the right understanding of what the standard is for revising the map.
Right.
But we do have to do the annual review, and that's my question, and it sounds like we're doing it.
I will respond to those terms, that in fact we do review the boundaries of the area, and we do consult with the under the direction of the health officer. And those are the two items of the previous letter. And at this point, you're right. I was going to address only the one item of the March 26th letter, today's letter, related to that you do
Consider everything.
Consider everything, and I do bring those items to your attention for discussion. And beyond that, I don't think, I think we have been extremely responsive to Mr. Pettit in every single correspondence. And if he feels that perhaps we're in the wrong, then he has other avenues.
Okay. Are we good enough on that topic?
So that's number one. The other public, this is a letter that you received, and this is from memo on March.
This is the
from
handwritten one?
Yeah.
Okay.
This letter.
Yes.
Where he, this is a letter from Mr. Rob Kavanaugh, and he's, I believe, a retired first responder, firefighter. And he's asking to develop a, for you to direct the staff to develop a wildfire protection plan. And related particularly to his neighborhood, which is the Glen Terra neighborhood. There's in 2018, House Bill 6109 was passed, which requires local jurisdictions to develop this wildfire prevention plan. But this wildfire prevention plan is only on the specific areas related to the Department of Natural Resources, where areas that perhaps they're prone to wildfires, forested and everything else. And those maps does not include the Glen Terra neighborhood because it's more the urbanized area, which is not the intent of the wildfire protection plan. We have reached out to Mr. Kavanaugh, and we have we'll let him know that really his request may not be able to accomplish or taken into account because, again, the Glen Terra neighborhood where he lives is outside of the wildfire protection area the DNR has.
Is it in the UGA of Lacey?
Yeah. So that's number two. I'm not planning to address this afternoon, but I just want to circle back. That's how we're going to be responding. The other public testimony that I'd like to address with you is the testimony you received 2 weeks ago from Mr. Mike Wright, and this related to the biosolids. Mr. Wright provided testimony. He provided a documentation related to Title 24 of the Thurston County Code that addresses the biosolids. In Title 24 of the Thurston County Codes, it really states the fact that we need to get into an agreement, or a memorandum of an agreement with the Department of Ecology as to how we can coordinate any biosolids activities in the county. Attached in your packet,
I don't think I got
right here, right here.
I don't think I got that.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I got copies.
Okay. Thank you.
So what really you asked me to explore what abilities the county has to prevent this type of activities in the county. And something to tell you, we have zero ability.
So it's all up to the ecology?
And this is a memo, somewhat of an email to the Department of Ecology. The gist of a potential memorandum of agreement with the Department of Ecology is just to formalize how we provide comments to any particular project to the perhaps ecologists concerned related to biosolids. But at no point the MOA, the memorandum of agreement, will give the county delegate that authority to approve, deny any biosolids permitting process. So, so that's where we are really. And I think you asked me what the ability the county has to prevent any particular projects in the future. We have nothing other than what we have done in the past, provide comments, outlining some of the concerns that we have related to these particular activities. And also, as anything else, we have the option of challenge that in the courts, in a particular permit that perhaps the county doesn't believe meets the intent of the county's values. So that's really, I want to circle back with you in terms of the question that you asked, and unfortunately, there is very little that we have available to the county, which is, for me, it was unfortunate, extremely unfortunate that we have. And attached to that is all the RCWs and WACs dictating, governing the authority of DOE related to the biosolids activities. And so
is it outside of our purview? I mean, it isn't like we've not created a certain ordinance or not the state law is such that they ultimately have the authority. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and the Title 24 of the counties, Title 24, that speaks of the biosolids, only outlines saying the application needs to be submitted to the Department of Ecology. That's the extent.
Yeah, but if we changed that, could we say it has to be submitted to us or health department? Or?
No,
but it wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter because we don't have that.
We don't have any authority to do that.
We don't have any authority to do so.
Okay, so that would take some enabling legislation to get passed.
Yeah, it will be up to, bingo, it will be changing the state law that will give the counties the ability to control the destiny in a way related to biosolids.
What I'm reading here in the second page is that ecology has the power. They just don't do it. It says ecology may delegate to a local health department the powers necessary to issue and enforce permits, but Art is telling us at the top that he checked with ecology. They told us they don't give local health jurisdictions full permit authority. So they could give that to us.
And this is this from Peter Lyons. This memo that is in here. It specifically addressed that it will be unlikely.
Where are you at on yours?
Where are you at on that?
Yeah. On the
front page.
The one that I just gave you, front page.
Okay.
That specifically says unlikely they will delegate that authority to the county.
Okay. This doesn't prevent us, though, from writing a letter to the governor as the Board of County Commissioners or to our local representatives in all the overlapping districts, right?
Maybe a good item for you to consider as part of the legislative agenda for next year.
Well, but how about, would there be, I mean, I guess we've made it kind of known, but have we maybe sent a letter signed by all three commissioners, if we all felt the same way about it, to each one of our elected representatives in any of the overlapping districts, that we're very concerned about water quality, and this could be detrimental to water quality, and we would ask that they apply pressure or twist somebody's arm or whatever. I'm just saying, I would like to write that letter. I mean, don't worry, I'm not a good enough writer. I'd sign a letter that was written properly.
So, like for me, I didn't know a lot about this issue. I was convinced by the work that our staff did that in this particular case, because of it's the shallow aquifer and the fast-moving aquifer and the proximity to the Nisqually River, that for all those reasons, I don't know if there's other places that would be appropriate to use biosolids. I haven't yet formed the opinion that they're inappropriate anywhere in Thurston County. I'm open to being convinced that that's true. I just don't know. The only one I really looked at was this Nisqually River one, and after hearing what the Yelm residents had to say and reading what Art Starry had to say in his analysis, I was convinced not a good idea. Is it your position that we shouldn't be applying them anywhere in Thurston County, period?
Well, I don't know enough about it for that either. Yeah. But I know that I've listened to ecology in their presentation, they readily say they do not know what impact pharmaceuticals might have on the environment. They just don't know. And I just think it's a mistake to apply things when we don't know. And some of these other folks at some of these meetings have alleged that there are other processes available, burning them or something like that. I mean, I've heard of applying in more remote areas and then using certain plants that seem to be able to handle that and cleanse the soil. Hemp is one that I've heard about. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm willing to explore what we could do to help solve the problem. I don't think it does us or the environment or anybody any good to go ahead and make application in specific areas where I happen to know that the topsoil is shallow, the topography of that land runs right to the river, and it's wet half of the year. So why not write a letter laying those kind of things out, asking that Department of Ecology not do this? We're not saying they can't do it anywhere, but that's a poor location. I don't know enough about it. I'm not an expert in it.
Yeah,
It appears from this information that ecology welcomes our input to any decision that they're in the process of making.
And we have submitted.
We have submitted.
Yeah, we've submitted a letter to them.
Both from the Board of County Commissioners as well as from the technical point of view related to a particular permit. So that, I think they make the point that with or without the memorandum for agreement, the county can provide comments.
Sure. Do we know if they've acted on our?
They still, because they've received a lot of comments. So they're still in the process of gathering all the comments before they make a formal decision on that, on that particular permit.
If Department of Ecology issues a permit, is there some appeal process like there is when our office issues permits?
Yeah, and first of all is the comment period in any CPAD related activity, and that's part of the process, which that's what we did. And then if they continue to stand within their CPAD decision, then the county has the ability to challenge that and appeal that. And the next appeal will be through Superior Court.
I mean, I would opt for the appeal route, if it gets to that point. But I would still like to keep our elected representatives informed about what is going on in their community. They might not, I mean, they could hopefully be aware.
I'm willing to draft a letter, but it's still don't grasp what the context of that letter will be. Considering what Commissioner Minzer stated, is the board in the position to say no biosolids period in the whole county? Or just in certain areas?
I don't know if we know enough to make that statement, but I'm willing to say this is certainly not a location that is going to be beneficial to the environment.
Well, that has
and we're worried about water quality right now,
So
and the orca and everything, we talk about we're concerned, but that doesn't look like we're very concerned to me.
So that statement you have already made.
Yes.
Particular to this permit.
But we haven't sent that statement to our elected officials.
So do you want to forward that letter to the state representatives? Is that?
I would.
I'm just asking.
No, I mean, I would like to have that happen, but
the letter that we sent to Ecology, I don't have a problem with that, sending it on.
CC each one of our elected officials, including our congressional representatives. I'd give it to all of them.
Okay.
I mean, Denny Heck has been very concerned about Puget Sound water quality, and I've talked to some of the NOAA scientists that tell me they have no idea the detrimental impacts, mainly that pharmaceuticals will have, but other chemicals as well that we don't have a good understanding.
Will do. So this afternoon, I closed the loop with Mr. Wright's testimony 2 weeks ago. We have contact the Department of Ecology, and unfortunately, the county does not have any ability to.
You know, even U.S. Fish and Wildlife, they've kind of, you know, caused us a headache on gophers, but they've listed the steelhead that returns to Nisqually, and I can't help but think this is detrimental to fish in the Nisqually River. So why shouldn't they be part of this whole SEPA process? I mean, they're telling us we can't build a building within 600 feet of a gopher mountain.
Well, I don't know if they haven't.
Well, I haven't heard anything that they have. Let's find out. I don't know. Have somebody get a hold of them. Send them a letter and just, you know, send them something. Say, look, you guys are concerned about species. You got an endangered species in the Nisqually River,
So
and I haven't.
Unfortunately, the comment period for that particular permit is closed.
That doesn't mean we can't still write a letter.
Well, we already did.
No, to U.S. Fish and Wildlife?
You asked me to send a letter to encourage U.S. Fish and Wildlife to send a letter on this permit.
To intervene in protecting a species they've got listed. That's what I would ask them, if it's possible. Why not? Do we want to protect salmon or not? That's the bottom line. I'm willing to go, I'm either all in or all out, I guess. I'm not halfway in. I think it would be detrimental to an endangered species, namely the steelhead that are now listed out of the Nisqually River. And I'd like to have them intervene in it. Do something beneficial.
Maybe a phone call from a commissioner may be more effective.
I don't know. Phone calls don't seem to mean much. They get lost. When you put something in writing, then we've got a tracking.
Because on the letter, we're speculating in terms of the effects of this particular.
I don't mind speculating that letter, saying that we have no idea what pharmaceuticals are going to do to this endangered species. Please take a look at this. If they find a dead salmon in the river, go after the biosolids people or something. I don't know. I just don't like to give up. But I mean, I suppose I need
I'm not suggesting giving up. I'm just trying to work within the parameters that I've been given.
Maybe we can discuss this some more on Friday.
Okay. That's all I have for you.
Okay, that it? Yep. You got something burning your
I don't.
commissioner's items, sir?
Nothing.
Okay, we'll let her slide, and we'll see everybody back here at 2 o'clock, I guess, huh? Thank you all.